fucking way how I want it too.
Yeah.
You
And
don't like it? Too fucking bad.
when people ask us how the fuck we do it, we help them.
That's the way I fucking want to do it.
Yeah. Always a troll and an asshole, man. You get a lot of those from YouTube, but what are you gonna do? All right.
We should be live.
We
Live. Hold on, I gotta check.
yeah, there's a few on the tube. All right. Welcome to Shine Talking Shots, y'all. Roger, what's your comment? What's up, Gordon? Check in comments while I try to share the link and the love. What the hell's happening
Oh,
now?
fuck.
Why in the hell is it doing this to me? Oh no.
My phone's dead.
What?
My fucking phone's dead. Didn't even check on it today. What's up, y'all? Gordon, Eric, Marfogel.
What's up, Theo? Yeah, share the link, share the love. So give us a sec.
Man, that's a good Bloody Mary.
It is, man. I like that single malt too. That was a damn good drink, man. I could.
Yeah, I think I might have to smoke another glass of single malt.
Man, that stuff is awesome. I really like the flavor of it. Very
Justin knows what the hell he's doing.
Yeah, he certainly does. He certainly does. Winning master distillers, certainly they weren't playing favorites. they definitely.
Oh no, he definitely earned what he got his title.
Ain't no doubt about it. If it tastes anything like everything he sent me, it's all top notch. But I think that the taco, of course, but I think that single malt that's marketable. You know, he could put that on the shelf and do quite well with that.
I think any of the four you sent me, you could put them on the shelves. Now, marketing it might be a little different.
Well, the creams are hard to put on the shelf. I don't know that heavy cream and real cream would have the shelf life. You know, a lot of people would be kind of weary of that, but damn, it's good.
Sugarland's got all kinds of sipping creams on the shelf, and
but creams they use like coffee creamer that's shelf safe.
Well, heavy cream's got a longer shelf life than coffee creamer.
Does it?
Yeah.
Real dairy versus non-dairy.
I don't know. I don't know.
No, that non-dairy stuff lasts for fucking ever, man. It's trash. But a lot of people use it for that reason, you know. So I guess it's good for that, you know, because you don't want your cream curdled cream.
I thought it'd be bad by the time it got here, as long as it took. But
yeah, it went all over the United States to get here, didn't it?
Oh yeah.
You'd think from Iowa it just come straight east, but no, it went east, north, west, back east,
and then back down south.
And south.
It went back down to Knoxville before it come to me.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's crazy. And I think mine went to over up into Illinois and then
Indianapolis. Both of them went to Indianapolis.
Yeah,
and then over to I think Minnesota, and then back down to you. And
it's crazy.
Bypassed me and went down to fucking Knoxville.
Maybe Elon can straighten up the postal service too. I had my water bill last month. I got a late charge for the month prior, and I'm like, what the hell? And I looked and make sure I sent it. You know, hell, and sure enough, you know, I sent it. So, I'm like, well, I looked and you know it didn't clear the bank, so I'm like, well, it's got lost in the damn mail. So I sent the new bill in with both months. And about 3 or 4 days later, boom, that other check comes in. And I'm like, it's either got lost in the mail or it got lost in processing there at the water place for the billing center for the water company. So I don't know. That's my guess. I still think that's actually what happened. But what are you gonna do? Just have to go on, man.
Coming some. How you doing, buddy? Gordon Shiner, man. Oh, I said hey.
Trying to get this shared a little bit.
I think you're getting slower than faster.
Yeah, this is definitely slower, a lot slower. It takes a long time on this little laptop. Definitely takes a little more time. What's everybody got going on this week?
How's it going, Simon?
What's up, Simon? Be with y'all in just a moment. Hell. Let me share that link to copper steel.
Hell of a deal for a 40 gauge copper steel with everything. Mash barrels, grinder, burners for $12.50. I almost thought it was a scam. How many gallon was it? Oh, 40 gallon copper steel.
40?
It is a hell of a deal.
For how much?
$12.50 with the grinder, the burner, mash barrels.
That's awesome deal. Simon got that?
Gordon Shiner, man.
Oh, awesome deal. Where'd you find that deal?
He said he almost bought it.
Oh, he didn't get it?
Said he almost thought it was a scam. Was it used or all brand new? Hey, Justin. Fancy seeing you here.
What's up? What's going on, brother?
See, I'm drinking still, don't you?
All right, let me go through the chat here. I'm sorry.
That'd be a Leary on Marketplace.
What's up, Gordon? What's up, Eric? Phil, what's going on?
You see what I'm drinking, right, Justin? Still. It's damn good, buddy. I tell you what.
What's going on, Damon? Hey, Simon.
Starting to get filled up on it.
Hell of a deal. 40 gallon copper with everything. Mash bills, grinder burners. I'd have to see it, Gordon. I mean, anytime you see a deal like that, I'd have to, and I'd drive a little bit and go see it and buy it on site, but I wouldn't buy anything sight unseen unless it came from, reputable.
Yeah, I mean, and Facebook and Marketplace is kind of leery.
Yeah, I'd have to go see it. And Justin, I didn't say that your taco would get lost in a Bloody Mary. I said it would be wasted in one because I like it clear. I could, with just
I like the Bloody Mary.
Well, the uniqueness of it, as a clear liquor is really, I think, what makes it stand out. I think you could take vodka, V8 and some taco spice and dump it in there. You wouldn't have the same thing. But,
yeah, but I said earlier,
it would be,
I think,
right. But clear, to me, clearness, being the clear is what gives it its uniqueness and
definitely unique.
Special.
I mean, it's
I think
definitely the first one I've ever heard of and tried.
Yeah,
so.
hell yeah, it's amazing. I couldn't believe it, man.
But
so
I mean,
much
if you just took like I said, vodka, tomato juice, and taco seasoning. All you're gonna taste is the taco seasoning. You got the shell, or
Well, I mean,
like
you'd
I
have
said, I
right.
taste
You're
the
not going to get
burger
the
in it.
shell. You're not going to get the shell. But yeah, it's awesome. I like it by itself, and I think I would like it too in with a little spicy V8 or something like that for sure. But then I think it would lose its uniqueness of being that kind of flavor in a clear liquor, because then you're just stepping on it, man.
I like it both ways. I
Yeah,
really like it. I really like it more
that's what
with
I
the.
heard about you, man. I don't know.
Oh, fuck off! I just caught on to that. Not about the fucking taco, you dick.
Uh,
I mean, I do like it both, the clear and the Bloody Mary, but I prefer the
yeah, I
Bloody
know what
Mary
you're
over
saying,
both.
brother. It wouldn't be a show if we didn't bust each other's balls a little bit now. You got mine earlier anyway, so I had to get you back. So what's everybody drinking tonight? Hey, Lisa.
Taco Bloody Mary, taco liquor Bloody Mary, taco
Liquor
Bloody Mary liquor,
taco. Liquor
taco Bloody
taco.
Mary liquor.
Taco liquor.
I don't know.
So so you're a
That's
taco
definitely
liquor
good.
kind of guy, huh?
Well, I like the liquor taco. I mean,
I'm a taco liquor
I
kind of
like
guy
liquor.
too.
I can't even get tongue tied.
Yeah.
Hey, Lisa, how you doing?
Now I had to behave herself. Lisa's here.
Hell, she's worse than us.
I know.
I've seen some of the comments she's made.
Yeah, too. I seen some of the shit she posts.
Yeah.
I bet you get her at a party and offline at a party, she'd be a wildcat.
Oh, great mash with the cake. Oh, green mash bro with the cake still without thumping, but with a loose flavor and
Yeah.
no. If you without a thump, you actually retain more flavor and proof. You'd be down a little, but
Where
it
you
wouldn't
coming on?
not
Oh,
enough.
Eric's. Okay.
Eric, but you wouldn't be
Yeah.
losing much proof.
Man, it's hard for me to see on this little laptop. Damn. I put that up and it didn't help much. Usually I got a big 32-inch screen in front of me. That's why my eyes are going all over the place when I look at it. All grain mash, run on a keg still without thumper. Yeah, you wouldn't lose as much for sure. Yeah, the thumper, you get a second distillation in the thumper, well, somewhat of a second distillation, and when that happens, you're leaving water in the thumper. So water builds up in that thumper, and when you're leaving that water behind, you're leaving some of that flavor behind. And as you increase the proof, some of that flavor kind of gets lost as well. So
Gets dissipated.
yeah, yep. What's going on, Jeff? Yeah, it's definitely a new look for my backdrop for sure. It's not my usual backdrop. I'm not at home right now.
What's up, Roy?
Marfugelfield got 2 flavors from Uncle Moonshine today. Well, that's
I bet you
awesome.
they both. I bet you they both include tater shine
Yeah. What did he
as
send
a
you? A little
base.
coffee and some root beer, or what'd you get, brother? I like his coffee and root beer. What's going on, Roy? What's up, brother?
I'm still waiting for Mark to run a grain. I think the only thing that I've known he tried to run tater and root beer. Yeah, only thing I know he tried to run was that sweet feed,
I'm
but he's
trying to
good with
think.
his tater.
He well, that was a brandy he ran while we were there, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was it was a tater shine base, but
Right. But what was
he
that one? What was that one that we?
Maggie.
Yeah, that was a
That was
brandy, but I can't remember.
it was a elderberry or something like
Elderberry. Yeah,
that.
that's right. Yeah, I think it's elderberry. Yeah, well, yeah, I couldn't remember, but yeah.
Yeah, it was a tater shine base though.
Sips. It's a new way to calculate time. Yeah. Well, I don't have the shots bell tonight, so Roger's going to have to come up with his little dingling. I don't know if this makes any noise. It's close. It makes a little bit.
Right on, Justin. Right on, buddy.
Huckleberry.
Yeah.
That's what it
Huckleberry, yeah.
was. Lisa knows everything, man. She's got the memory of an elephant, man. I can't remember shit. Huckleberry.
As hard as I hit my head the other night, I'm surprised I remembered my name.
Man.
I didn't even know I hit my head until I was taking a shower. I was washing my hair. I was like, what the hell?
You got another knot on there?
Hell yeah. Added to the collection, there's got to be 4 or
I've got
5
quite a few as well. You can see them. I think the whole front of my head is like one big knot. It's protruding. All that football, car wrecks, motorcycle wrecks. But you're lucky, man.
Oh, yeah.
You're lucky you went over sideways instead of forward,
Yep. Been lucky on every one of them so far.
Yeah. 4th gen corn rye 2-row. Sounds good. Yeah, he's definitely going to have to do double shots to make up for me. I'll have.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I mean,
might help that tailbone. Take that pain away.
I'll tell you what, this lemon and this Bloody Mary, what a difference.
Yeah, I can't wait to get me a quart of that. Or a half gallon. I'll buy that stuff. I want some of that malt too, that single malt.
I told Justin the same thing.
Yeah, well, I was like, man, I want a half gallon of each of them, man. I want, especially that single malt. I really like that. I could sit and sip on that all day, man. That's definitely a great drink. What's going on, Mr. Hatley? What's up, brother? Good to see you on here. What's going on down in Tejas? I know it's pretty warm where I'm at today. It's got in the mid 80s here.
Yeah, shut up. We got to 78.
Yeah, but tonight it's going to get cold. Tomorrow's going to be cold again, and I'm going to be basking in the sun, working my ass off. It's another windy day, huh? In paradise.
It was a little windy here too, but I mean, it made it feel comfortable. It was 78-degree air temp, but that wind was just really nice. Third Bloody Mary down. I think that's enough for tonight. I have heartburn like a son bitch.
So, Michael, are you and Richard got something going on down there? I think last time I saw y'all were collaborating on something.
Dan, are you like a spicy Bloody Mary? That's what you got to use on it.
Did you just send me that picture of the donkey?
Yeah.
I just saw a while ago.
I just saw it a while ago.
It's funny as shit. Yeah, well, I just open. When I got StreamYards open, I can't see all that Facebook stuff.
I think Lisa sent that to me before, and then
I thought y'all had some stuff going on down there. Yeah, Richard's another one of those. It's combining culinary skills in mashing and shining.
Oh, Richard,
he likes Landry. Yeah, he likes to do a lot of those desserts and different things like that, and mix it with the shine. He does a lot of interesting stuff too, just like Mr. Meredith. What's going on, Kimbo? What's up, brother? What's up, Dalton? What's going on, man? Yeah, I got the lights on. It's all different, man. I'm on a different computer. I'm in a different room, different headset. You can see the lights on it. And yeah, a light above my head shining right off my dome. I should have polished that up, man. It's like it got a little more shine up there. That's my shine for the night. Yep. Yeah, I think Justin and Richard could get in a lot of trouble together.
Oh God, can you imagine
They could do like a full course meal of moonshine, man. Appetizers, main course, dessert, do it all, man. So what kind of corn you got going, Kimbo? Yeah, I'm gonna have to get the buffer, man. Polish my head. People when they meet me, they're like, "Damn, you do have a little bit of hair up there, but it doesn't show on camera." But in real life, there is a few long hairs sticking up. Just small yeller dent. That's good stuff.
Smoked single malt, Santa.
Yeah. That'd be some interesting. See what he's done to you, Justin.
Oh God. It actually amplifies the taste of it, I think.
Yeah, it's I love it the way it is, man. It's awesome. I'd say I'd like to try it that way as well. I'd like to try it with a little cherry. It'd be interesting. Yeah, it's really good.
Put in it was cherry. Cherry or apple? Yeah, cherry.
So what'd you say you're running tomorrow, Roy? I think you said 4 grain. Fourth gen. That's right. 4th gen. That's right. Corn ride too. What's going on, Jeff? What's up, brother? Oh, I don't feel bad. It just accentuates my handsomeness. You know, get distracted by all the hair and shit. Just yeah, that exotic stuff can get a little pricey, can't it, brother? I'll tell you what, you know, Roger makes some pretty good yeller dent, just regular old corn. I make some pretty decent regular old corn. It's hard to beat for the money, you know. Good cheap corn liquor, you know. Yeah, baby. You know it.
Look at your own fan club.
Yeah. I'm real popular
on
YouTube.
We should we start calling you Big Sexy?
Yeah, no, that's
easy. No, that's easy. Yeah, that's easy.
Yeah.
Which you have to stay at dead sexy. I mean, you got one foot in the grave anyway. Old man.
Yeah, dead sexy. That's it. Old man. Yeah, I like yellow dent. It's really. I like
my mountain brandy with it. I mean, comes out awesome.
I mean, I like a yellow better than a lot of the heirloom corns. Actually, you know, I like it better than Buddy Butcher, and I like it better than Jimmy Red. I like it better, you know, than single. You know, now you start combining some of those heirlooms. It's good. Now Ohio Blue's a good sweet, and Oaxacan Green's a good sweet, but you know, it's hard to beat. Oh, Yeller Dent, man. If you do her right, she's turned out some pretty good corn. Oats, awesome. Yeah, I like oats in mine. I don't almost quit counting that as a grain. I just throw it in everything except brandies. And I might try some brandies if I know I'm not making it for wine, but most of my brandies start out as wines, and if they turn out as a good wine, they stay that way. But if they don't make a decent wine, then they get distilled. But by the end, it's a little bit late to add the oats. So
Freaking good.
it is, man. I can definitely put that away. That's a top shelf bottle right there, man. And
Ripping them
it's
out, yeah.
yeah, it took some time and effort and expense. It's not cheap doing all malt. Good 6 row. Ththose ain't cheap. Good
And
malted 6 row ain't
being
cheap.
aged on oak and finished,
Yeah,
it's like a
putting it in the
finish. It's
barrel
like
for
a
2.5 months. Yeah,
and then doing the smokes, it's like a finish, or aging on it. It's
right.
fucking amazing.
Yeah, a lot of love went into that, man. It's good. It shows.
Kudos,
Nah,
Justin. Kudos.
no, Dave, I don't. How you doing, David? Good to see you on here, brother.
Do you mill your oats? I do. Just because I got the mill and I feel like doing it.
Yeah, I just throw them in there. I just throw handfuls in there on top of it once I'm about done with everything. I don't even. Sometimes I've just thrown them in there without even converting them. But yeah, it's best to convert them. And you can. What do they say? Cut them instead of what do they call that? Cut them instead of grinding them up. I can't remember what that process is called. Man, I'm getting old. What is a good cheap grinder? I got one that turns everything into powder. It's not adjustable, Kimbo. The ones I got it on Black Friday, and they're normally like 230. They ain't cheap, and this one was like 140 or 50. It was pretty good. Steel cut, yeah, steel cut. Thank you, Cloud. Um, they it's just like it, but it's like the one on Amazon with the red, the blue, and the silver.
Big
Uh,
silver hop.
yeah, hopper.
That's the one I got.
Yeah, you got look the wattage. That's what you have to look at because they all look the same, but some have a little higher wattage rating than others.
It fixed it.
But
Mine really isn't bogged down unless I got it
yeah,
to. I'm trying to mill it too fine all at once.
yeah. I mean, even winter wheat, the hardest freaking thing you can imagine, man. It just chops right through it, man. But with these, you can adjust the grind on it, and you can make a little more coarse grind, which I like. Um, One thing I will tell anybody that gets one of those things, don't screw in that grinder all the way to fine, especially while it's on, because
Yeah,
you'll start grounding into the metal of the
kill
other
your
side.
blades.
Yeah, it's not good. Don't do it. You'll dull your blades pretty quickly, but yeah, it's I really regret not getting one sooner. Uh,
I got tired of doing this, so I said, "Fuck it."
well, I didn't. I never went that route. I always just use like blenders and food processors. I'd go to Goodwill and get blenders and food processors after I broke a couple of the old ladies and got in trouble for all that. So the little food choppers, I've tried it all. But rundown on cleaning your new copper steel coal. Congratulations.
Good builder, really good builder.
Yeah, great guy too. Yeah, I'd run some vinegar through it, man. I mean, you're not going to have a lot of green.
Adam didn't say if he done a cleaning run in it or anything.
Yeah, I'd ask him, but probably not. But if not, I'd run some vinegar through it, and then I'd run some water, just steam some water through it to kind of clear the vinegar out, and then I'd make a sugar, just a sugar shine Sacramento run with some sugar shine. Now that might not be necessary, but I like doing that because water is a solvent. So, you're doing three things. with the vinegar, that's kind of an acidic thing. Vinegar is a pretty decent acidic. So you're removing things that an acid would remove when you do the vinegar. Then you follow up with water. You're rinsing out the vinegar, and you're also removing things that are more water soluble. And then when you do a sacrificial run with like a sugar shine, you want to just do something cheap, doesn't have to worry about it. You're getting things that are alcohol soluble, and a lot of your oils and stuff, the acid won't get, the water won't get, but the alcohol will get, and it'll dissolve that out. So a lot of times there's rubbing compounds on the copper, oils, manufacturing oils when they roll those sheets out. It's oiled to the machines dripping oil on them and stuff, and they're oiled to I guess they to get them to roll up properly. So you're going to have some manufacturing oils, rubbing compounds. They polish it up at the shop, and so you're going to have a little bit of that. But doing the acid, then the water, and then the alcohol will for sure get as much clean as you can. If you can get inside, citric acid, it might be a little bit strong. I only use citric acid once I see some greening. Once I see some sulfurs building up and some sulfides building up inside, and some filigree or some oxidation, then a little bit of citric acid and water might make it a little bit more acidic than a vinegar,
I do
and
love
kind of,
vinegar and citric
yeah,
acid.
and
Just like
clean
that.
that up. And it'll clean it up a little better. But yeah, just and another thing you can do is after you do that alcohol run, take your heads and take your liquor, because the mash inside that boiler is what, 10-12%, 8, 10, 12%. So if you take your heads and that sacrificial liquor and just put it on a rag and just go inside and rub it down real good and hard, and clean it with that alcohol, and that'll definitely get the rest of anything off, any kind of flux. Most of your flux is water soluble, so that's not going to be an issue. But the buffing compounds and the manufacturing oils, yeah, and use a white cloth and let me know how it works out for you. But every time I've done that, I'll take a white cloth and I'll pour heads on it, and I'll go in there, and I'll rub it, get a lot of elbow grease, and I'll give it a good rubbing and cleaning. And I look at that cloth, man, it's gray. It's getting stuff up. So, I feel better once I do that. It's just keep running it, and you don't have to worry. If you just rinse it out every time, don't let back sit in there for a long time. Make sure you rinse her out good after each run and dry it out good, and keep using it. And you shouldn't have to clean it. Hard clean too often. But yeah, one thing you want to, we used to talk about, we thought was a good idea, was using citric acid water and here's my mind, man, again. What's the stuff you put on your boo boos? God bless, man. No, it's the peroxide.
Peroxide, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people are mixing the citric acid and peroxide, and that makes a pretty strong acid. And it can actually, if you look at the surface of copper under a microscope, it'll look kind of smooth, but you'll see some grooves and scratches. But once you use something really highly acidic like that, especially with that peroxide in it, you'll see it'll look different. You'll see bumps and stuff that weren't there before, and what it eats into that oxidative layer of it takes all the oxidative layer off, but it eats into it, and it's not real smooth anymore, and it makes it a little bit easier for it to turn green on you and to oxidize. So yeah, they say not kind of stay away from the peroxide, because it really super. I mean, if you get one that's like green, and it's just not coming clean, yeah, you might have to step it up. But there's probably some other things out there that you could use that would do a little better. Yeah, was that a shot, Dean?
I don't know.
Sound
I
like
guess.
it. Yeah, I agree, Justin. Just keep using her, and you won't have to worry about keeping it clean. Some good beginner recipes. Well, I always recommend the first time somebody does it, and a lot of people disagree, but I always say do a sugar wash, and
Hater.
tater.
Hater.
Well, taters get a little more expensive, but sugar's cheap, and it gets you used to mashing. It gets you used to adjusting pH because it's going to crash, and but your first time running your steel, running that sugar, it don't matter what, even if it's a stainless setup, running it will if you got any problems, if you got any leaks, if you got any issues, if you got gaskets that aren't sealing well, those come to light, and that's not something that you want to mess up while you've got an expensive blue agave tequila run or something like that running. You don't want surprises when you have a pretty expensive mash going. So starting out with just an old good old sugar wash, and you getting used to using your hydrometer and adding sugar to get your sugar levels up to where you want it. Um, and on the second part of your question, yes, there definitely is a big difference in copper and stainless. Heat dissipation in copper, your heat spreads better. Copper will naturally take the sulfides out of a lot of your brandies and other mashes that have yeast that tend to have a little more high sulfide content. So it takes those out. Those sulfides kind of add a bad flavor to your shine. It's not in all of them, and it's not in a high percentage of all of them, but some of them is kind of random. And they'll, you can, you can also add like a copper mesh. If you have it like an all stainless setup, you can add copper mesh to your column or to your football or to somewhere in the vapor path. Just add that copper mesh, and that'll help remove those sulfides too. So unless you have a really heavy sulfurous mash, um, that mesh will help pretty well too. But yeah, copper is definitely the best, but it's also expensive, and it's also a little bit difficult to maintain and keep clean. So, there's trade offs, but I found that stainless with that mesh is a pretty good route for beginners and intermediates. It works very well, and for somebody just getting into it that doesn't want to make that big expenditure, it's a pretty good way to start. Yeah, well, but yeah. Um, when you get your mesh in, first thing you want to do is put a magnet to it, and if the magnet sticks, send it back because it's some of those scrubbers are basically a copper um, coated steel, and they're used for scrubbing. On Amazon, some of them that says 100% copper, they're not. Some of them that says it is. I've been pretty lucky so far. I've not gotten any plated copper mesh, but it's out there. But usually a magnet test will let you know right off the bat if that's what you got and you don't want to use that.
All right. So, hey, listen, I got to get out of here. I've been on this tailboat for so long.
Oh,
I'm serious. I've been
you,
bearing it.
you need to drink more, man.
I drank enough for you. Don't you feel it?
No, you got to drink more, bro.
Oh,
7 pounds of corn, 7 pounds of sugar, and 5 gallons of water. You don't even need the corn. You can do the 1-1-1, which is basically a pound of corn, pound of sugar, and a gallon of
gallon of
water.
water.
Yeah, yeah. Ketchup works well. It's got vinegar in it. It helps. That's and tomato. The acidic. I guess what would that be? Acid in a tomato, ascorbic acid maybe. But yeah, Both of this got vinegar and I guess the acid from the tomato itself. So yeah, anything a mild acid like that works. I think even Star Sand's somewhat acidic, so that'd probably
It
help
is.
too. Yep, yep.
But all right, y'all, I gotta get out of here.
All right,
Thank you for
brother,
the help.
man. I hope you
All
feel
right,
get feeling better tomorrow.
I do too.
All
I've been
right.
out here for like 4 hours. So all
Yeah, I
right,
know.
later, y'all.
Later, man. Take it easy,
Have a good
brother.
one. Yep. Bye.
Yep. Oh hell, we got to fix that. That's a little bit better. No, that's not better. I'm too big. Yeah, let's see. That's too small. Yeah, shit. No. Yeah, that'll work. You can see militia there on the side, so that's pretty cool. What's up? What's going on, Marcel? No problem, KRB. Anytime, brother. Are you in the militia, KRB? And all you YouTubers, uh if you're on Facebook, look us up, join the militia. We help a lot of people on there and answer a lot of questions. We got a lot of knowledgeable people there and pretty great group of people. You know, it's a big family and a lot of good discussions and a lot of fellowship, good times, and a lot of the festivals that everybody goes to. So we all kind of get together at those and hang out. It's a lot of fun. I know you are, Gordon. So what's going on, Marcel? What are you drinking tonight? So KRB, what kind of have you got a setup already? Looking to get into it, or and Clipofo? Join the militia, man. We'll help you out. And there's also if y'all are interested in going the copper route, we've got some builders that are members of the militia, and they're all, tried and true. Definitely, man. Just get on Facebook. If you're on Facebook, just type in Moonshine Militia, and we'll pop up. And when you do, um, when you hit the join button, scroll down. There's some questions. We just ask those questions. There's no right or wrong answer. We don't care what you put, but we want you to answer them because there's a lot of bots that automatically just join groups and then they flood your groups with a lot of ads and shit like that. So we put the questions out there just to stop those automated bots. So yeah, just go. Yeah, a lot of knowledge there, man. You got a lot of old shiners there like me and master distillers like Meredith and people that's uh, run commercial distilleries for many years. So there's a whole wealth of knowledge there. A lot of very helpful people too. But yeah, I'm just an old hippie too. Yeah, clip off of it. Just just on Facebook, just in search groups and just type in Moonshine Militia and like I say, just answer the questions, and run a keg. Hey, keg steels are awesome, man. It's good. 15 gallons is a decent amount to run. I mean, I know you can't do the full 15 at a time, but you run 12 and a half, 13 gallons in them. That's a pretty decent run. You can get some decent amount of liquor out of that. And you can't beat the price. That's for sure. But yeah, Phil Billy, and several other make heads for the keg steels. They've got copper heads. They've got a lot of different accessories that they make to go on to, your keg steels and some of those Vever steels that you can see out there. Yeah. Yeah, we got the Copper Steel Outlaws. Yep. That's mine and Roger's group, the Copper Steel Outlaws. It's a good group too, but yeah, I encourage everybody to join the militia, and then the other groups too, but the militia I see as the center, of a lot of groups. People from a lot of groups also belong to the militia, for what we stand for. It's with moonshine, Second Amendment, and all that good stuff. So, you don't just join one, you're part of the family. And there's a lot of admins from other groups, like me and Roger and a lot of other people that are also in the militia. And that's Phil Billy's group. 10-gallon Vever stainless steel. Awesome. That's great. Right. Okay. So when you run your first run, save your 4 shots in your heads and off to the side, and we'll teach you about making cuts. Awesome. And we'll teach you about making cuts, but you can take that your 4s in your heads and just take it inside that Vever and clean it out like I was talking with a white rag, and you'll see those rubbing compounds, man. It'll get them out, and it'll help you flavor some too. Run a turkey fryer for keg. No, nope. Now I will ask you, KRB, is the turkey fryer burner? Does it have like one jet, or is it the banjo burner that has lots of? What's going on, Marcus? What's up, brother? Does it have like a banjo burner with like 50 little teeny outlets on it? There's 2 different types. Some of them shoot a cone like just in the middle, and those are excellent for boiling water and stuff. But you got to be real careful with them because they focus that heat in one spot. They can sometimes tend to scorch when you're cooking with it, so you got to be real careful. But yeah, head drinker. Yeah, I bet you do, Dan. What's up, Marcus? Ground pinto beans. Let's see this. Ground pinto beans, yellow peas, corn. That sounds interesting. Add 2 row and a dark malt, little sugar. Well, damn, brother. Hell yeah. Sounds like a pretty good, interesting mix. The beans definitely be interesting, but you got some amylase to add to that? Oh, I see you added 2 row. Okay. Yeah. Because those beans, they have the starch. Peas have starch that all can be converted. Yeah, that'd be a pretty interesting drink, Marcel. That'd be interesting to try for sure. What's Bam Bam up today? Yeah, Dan likes that high proof stuff. Yeah. All right, Clip. Now, um, when you do cut it off at 90, don't cut your heat. Just end making your cuts when you get into the tails like that, and just move your bucket up there, and then let it run and let it run and let it run. And if you got a proofing parrot, you can see what your proof is as it runs down lower and lower and lower. But if you think about it, you've got 90 proof coming off when you're stopping. So that's a lot of alcohol. There's a lot of ethanol in there at 90 proof. I mean, that's what you normally buy in a fifth in a jar. So don't waste all that ethanol. There's a lot of good ethanol, and it's a lot easier to get good ethanol out of the tails than it is the heads, because that acetone, ethyl acetate, tends to bond with it pretty well, and it's a little harder to separate those two. But like tails, it's a little easier to separate, a lot easier to separate the tails from the ethanol. So quit making your cuts, and you can have all your drinking liquor to the side. But at 90 proof and below, if that's where your tails are, and you're starting to get that little tails, wet cardboard, wet dog, kind of musty, smell, then just move that bucket over and run it down to, when you get to about 20 proof or so, 10%, or, maybe a little higher if you don't want to run it down that far. But you can take all that and add it to your thumper if you're using a thumper for the next run, and you can recover the ethanol out of that. Or if it's too much to add to the thumper, when you take your mash and put it into your boiler, just add those tails back into it. Oh, great, KRB. Yeah, you can. No problem, brother. Yeah, you can use that for your 40 for sure, as long as you're getting a good, heat, a good area. Some of them are 8 inch, some of them are 10, I think. But yeah, that should work fine for it. It depends really, though. Some of those 40s are fat 40s, and they have a pretty good bottom. I would recommend maybe a 10 and up for those, 10-inch burner. But yeah, it should work fine. Yeah, especially being a banjo burner. But back to the tails, Clippo. Um, Add those. Well, when you're ready to run your next mash, pour your mash in the steel, and if you got room, pour those tails in there, and you'll recover a lot of good ethanol out of those tails. There's a lot of good liquor in there that you don't want to waste. A lot of people waste a lot, man. They stop it at 80 or 90, and I mean, heck, when you buy a bottle, it's like a lot of vodkas and stuff. It's 80 proof, and it's like, man, that's what you're throwing away there. There's that much ethanol in there that can be recovered. So, yeah, you definitely want to save it. Good deal. Alpha liquid, high temp alpha, and some glucose. Hell yeah, man. Sounds like Marcel's got it going on, man. Like he's done this time or two. What do you think? Clipofo, it won't necessarily make it stronger, but it'll increase your volume. And it won't make it taste better, but it will increase the volume of alcohol that you get off there. Ethanol pretty much tastes like ethanol. The flavor comes from what your mash is, and it's usually in the water that goes with it. So adding those tails will add some flavor. Yeah, sure. And the ethanol, when it gets cooked off, it you'll get some of that water to carry over with it. So yeah, it'll add you some flavor. But it's just not like it would be if you were infusing with an infuser, or if you had a lot of heavy flavorings in a thumper, that you're getting your second that had a lot more concentrated flavor. But yeah, join the militia, join Copper Steel Outlaws, and ask any question, man. A lot of the groups, a lot of people don't like asking questions in them, because a lot of people that have been doing it a long time, they have to show everybody their knowledge, and they belittle people. They're like, you don't know shit, or you asking these stupid questions. What are you, some newbie? And you get a lot of that in a lot of groups. You won't get that in the militia or Copper Steel. Anybody that does that gets the boot. We're all there to help. Our biggest thing is, we want everybody to enjoy the hobby. B, we want them to be successful at it, because if you do it a few times and you turn out some shit product, and it's just not working out, and it's not good, and you're not getting help from people, and it's getting frustrating, and you've got money invested, and it's like, fuck it, I'm getting sick of this shit. I'll just buy it off the fucking shelf. And we don't want that. We want people to enjoy the hobby and progress and up their game and learn to make some liquor that's as good or better than anything you get on the damn shelf. So that's our goal, and to make it safe first and foremost, to make it safe. And there's a lot of things that you can do that help make it safer for you and everybody that's drinking it. But it's a lot of fun, and it's a good brotherhood. It's a lot of fun at the festivals that we go to. Once you're in there for a while, you'll make some buddies, and we all, most all of us, come from similar walks of life. We've all, most, a lot of us have little checkered pasts, and you know, used to be old hippies and do what old hippies do. And so you meet a lot of old hippies in there as well, and a lot of young ones. And you got a good mix, though, man. There's a lot of people in there from a lot of different walks of life. It's a lot of fun. But excuse me, I'm sorry. I forgot I had this mic. I'm used to using my Cam's mic, but yeah, it's at the festivals especially. It's a whole lot of fun, man. Some of them we can camp at, and we just hang around camp and drink and share jars and stories, and it's a lot of fun. Got a lot of truckers, bikers, plumbers, electricians, carpenters, all walks of life. Got some doctors, lawyers in there too. So, yeah, we got a little bit of everything in there, man. And everybody likes to. One thing we all have in common: we like to drink, and we like to do it yourself with a DIY, which is also a good group. DIY Shining Stuff. I run that group as well. But everybody, while you're at it, while you're not thinking about it, hit that like button and follow us on YouTube. Hit that like button on YouTube and subscribe. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. And when we come on, it'll send you a little notification that we're on, so you can jump on here and ask questions and hang out with us and do a few shots. I'm sorry tonight. I'm not at home. I'm at my future wife's daughter's house. We got to do some work on my fiance's house down here, so I'm not at home. Yeah, it's a giant family. It is a good family, man. Yeah, it's good to use a little charcoal to help take out the fusel oils. Some people say it takes out flavor, but it can take out some of them oils too. But sometimes those oils are good. I mean, maybe not in a white dog. So if you're making something for just moonshine and you're going to drink it soon, a lot of times you definitely want to get those fusel oils out of there. But sometimes if you're going to age it and you're going to let it sit a while, some of those fusel oils will estrify, and the process is called esterification. And it's a chemical process that takes place over time, so it doesn't happen really quick, and it generally happens in a lot of your whiskeys and bourbons and stuff while it's in the barrel. So you're not just, when they store it in a barrel, you're not just getting the flavor from the barrel. The actual alcohol that's been distilled itself is still going through a chemical process, and some of the processes are what's called esterification. And some of those oils and amino acids get converted into some flavonoids and hydrosols and phenols and other flavors that can be quite interesting and complex and make it taste pretty good. So, but in a white dog, they're not that good. So if you're going to drink it right now, yeah, I would definitely filter it uh, through some charcoal. And I mean, even when they dump it out of the barrel, you'll see a lot of times a little bed of charcoal there that they also use to, if there's any left, when they drop the bung on that barrel and roll it over and they drain it out, you can see some charcoal there, and that'll take the remaining fusel oils out that didn't esterify, and it add, take out some of those bad notes. But yep, yeah, I bet we do, brother. Uh-oh. I gotta, yeah, we got some slackers. We definitely got some slackers, man. Awesome. Glad you joined us. And yeah, ask any questions you got. And what's the best mash for a starting brewer? We were just talking about that a minute ago, Austin. I'm glad you asked. We recommend for a first time just a sugar wash. It's cheap, and it's something that if you mess up something, you're not out hardly any money at all because it's just sugar, yeast, and when you make it, I recommend you throwing in some. I don't know, some of you may not be from around the farms and stuff, but at a lot of your farmer feeding supplies and your tractor supplies and a lot of those places, you can get bags of oyster shells, crushed oyster shells, and they give them to chickens to help keep their calcium content up, so their eggs uh, have good strong eggs that don't get cracked in shipping, and it makes for a good solid egg that works out well, and it's good for the chickens. So they use these crushed oyster shells for your chickens, but that calcium carbonate also your helps buffer your mash so it doesn't get really acidic. Because what happens is, um, good question. I just use the same. I get wood staves, Jeff. Let me finish the. So I use. I'll get you next. So you, these crushed oyster shells, I rinse mine out. You can boil them to kill off anything that's in them, if you're worried about anything, cross contamination, anything like that. But it helps buffer it because when you do like a heavy sugar wash, um, or like a tequila with a lot of agave, rums with a lot of brown sugars and panellas and molasses and things of that nature, when you have a high sugar content like that, a lot of your mashes tend to turn acidic pretty quick, and we call that a pH crash. And when you get a pH crash, if you have those oyster shells, crushed oyster shells in there in a little bag, I just put them in a little bag. You could wrap them up in some cheesecloth or whatever, and just tie them up and throw them in there. You want a pretty good amount. It'll help buffer that, and it'll keep your pH from crashing. And what happens if your pH crashes? It gets a high acidity level, and your yeast doesn't like all that. So when the yeast when your pH gets into the twos, it's starting to affect your yeast. If it gets into the low twos, it's stressing the yeast out, and when the yeast gets stressed, they start kicking out a flavor that is not real good. It can make some off flavors for sure. And there's other things that can stress your yeast, like too high of a temp, uh, high acidic content, or on the other hand, too much. Too basic. Like if you get a pH of like 9 or 10. On the basic side, that can affect yeast as well. Probably even more so because yeast are designed to kind of work between a neutral down to fours into the three. But they say a 5.3 when you first start out, a pH of 5.3 is a good pH to start. And this is just science. Really, if you have decent water and you do the same thing every time, you don't have to get all scientific. You can do it just as easy, and simple as you want to, and you can make a science experiment out of it if you want to. It can get as complicated as you want to make it. I enjoy a little bit of the science, um, but you don't have to. You just understanding how it works sometimes is really all you need to know, and throwing in those eggshells can help a lot with the pH crash. So, to answer your question, I just do a sugar shine, um, and start with just water, sugar, dissolve your sugar in the water, let it cool, throw in your eggshells, oyster shells. Well, you can use eggshells as well, but those you deal with sulfur and you have to boil those and deal with it. It's just all basically calcium carbonate. But those oyster shells are cheap. You get a big 30-pound bag or something of them for like $12, and they last for a long time. When you're done with it, you can reach down in there and pull that cheesecloth bag out, rinse them off, and set it to the side, let it dry, and the next mash, throw it right back in there and use it again. And it's not like baking soda. It won't, if your pH crashes and you don't use them. Eggshells isn't something that you want to add to bring your pH back up. Then you're going to have to use a baking soda, which the yeast don't really like, but it's better than letting it get acidic. So the baking soda will bring it up pretty quick. Be careful because it will foam like crazy when you do. But that's for an emergency situation. But if you use those shells, you won't have to do that. You won't have to worry about all that, and that'll work pretty well for you. All right, let's see. Somebody else had a question. I'll go down here. So, Elson, that's the best mash. So just do a sugar wash, and it'll tell you also your first time, like we were talking about earlier, if you got any leaks in your system, you got some gaskets that are bad, you've got some fittings that don't fit right. If you're using compression fittings and they're not just right, these test runs like that will let you know if you got any issues and where they are and what you need to address. If it happens immediately, just shut the gas off or the electric off, whatever you're running, and address the problem, and then you can start back up again. And yes, during the middle of the run, you can stop it, let it cool, fix whatever needs to be fixed, and then heat it back up and pick up where you left off. It'll be just fine. All right. Have I ever heard of glass gem corn? Yes, sir. I'm growing some this year to grind and see what it makes. It's decent. It's different, but it makes some interesting. It'll make some interesting shine. Some people use popcorn, and you got lots of different heirloom corns. Each of them give a pretty unique flavor. But I will say, just good old yellow dent makes some pretty damn good shine, and it is cheap, cheap, cheap. So, but some heirloom corns to look out for. A lot of people like the reds; they're oily, earthy. If that's your bang, you can get some pretty good oily, earthy flavors from your Bloody Butchers and your Jimmy Reds. If you prefer a sweet, Ohio Blue makes a good sweet. Oaxacan Green makes a good sweet. Trying to think of that other blue corn a lot of people use. Ohio Blue and somebody help me out here. I'm getting old and I'm forgetting everything, but Ohio Blue's what I tend to use in Oaxacan. But there's lots of different heirloom corns that you can experiment with, but that's the beauty of it. You can try to get a lot of different corns, and you'll get a lot of different flavors from each of them. But yeah, that glass gem's some pretty stuff. How much oil would be in the beans? I've never done beans, but I think it would be fine. I mean, it's no way going to be worse than Justin's briskets and his taco shine and a lot of the stuff that are being done, and I doubt it's probably not worse than any Bloody Butcher oils. So, and if there are, it's you can skim them off, before you run it. You'll see it as it'll have like a yellow circle. You've seen fat on top of water. It'll do the same thing on your mash, and you can just dip them out, or you can sometimes just dip a paper towel and it'll soak up that oil into the paper towel, or something like that, and you can skim it off if you need to. Charcoal. I've got a neighbor that makes furniture and stuff using whiskey staves. I'm here in Kentucky where we do a lot of bourbon and of course, but there's a lot of craftsmen here that use barrel staves to make furniture, little bars, wall plaques. My neighbor's one of them. He does a lot of stuff with it, and he saves me a lot of his little small chunks of staves, which is perfect for dropping into jars. And I'll sand the outside that's got oxidated, that's gray, and I'll sand that down and get all the sawdust off of it, and then I'll get a torch out and I'll charcoal that thing all the way around, and I'll use that for aging, and also some of the smaller stuff that I get, and I'll just toast it up real good and use that for my charcoal filtering if I need to charcoal filtering. Oil ain't too bad with the beans, 6 days and still bubbling. Awesome. Yeah, if any oil develops, it'll be up on top. It'll float up, and you can just kind of skim it. But yeah, awesome, man. Well, you can bring some of them mason jars to the festivals and share. Yeah, we got a lot of festivals we go to. Two of the biggest ones are Maggie Valley Summer Jam and Farm to Bottle. Two awesome ones. They're both really a lot of fun, and a lot of people, my buddies and everybody from the militia and other groups, they'll a lot of those they try to make those every year, and we go to other ones, but for the most part, those are the two biggies that we really try to focus on the most. But you got Popcorn Sutton Jam, you've got Arkansas, which is a great time. Louisiana started their first one this year, and that looked like a really good time. We're going to try to make it down to. We got some in Missouri. We've got some in Ohio, along with Farm to Bottle. Beattyville here in Kentucky. That's coming up pretty soon. I go to that just cause it's close, and I like Donnie and Teresa, great people, and it's a good festival. It's a good time. Uh, Usually it's hot as hell though, because it's like in July, so it can be hot down there at that time. I think it's June or July. I can't remember what month it is, but yeah, it's a good time too. But there's a lot of good festivals. Outer Banks has a good festival. We're going to try to make it to this year. There's just so many good ones. I wish I could. I wish I could go to all of them, but I can't afford to do that. What's going on, Mister Arby? Good to see you, brother. Yeah, about bird washers. Yeah, there's a mash out there called bird watchers. It uses tomato paste. That one thing I like about it and don't like it uses tomato paste as a yeast nutrient, and I did fail to tell you all when you do your sugar washes, um, throw some bran flakes in there where you can throw some of this bird watchers. Bird watchers has everything you need, but it's a little light in nitrogen. There's something called yan and fan, and yan is a yeast assimilable nitrogen, and fan is a free amino nitrogen. And both of those, like plants, need nitrogen to grow. Well, your mash is kind of like a plant. It needs that nitrogen too. The tomato paste gives a lot of micronutrients and selenium and uh, there's a whole host of calcium. It gives you the trying to think all the different micronutrients that you get out of it. Zinc is one that's essential that you have to have. Um, so there's a lot of that you get really good stuff out of that tomato paste, and it's a great supplement. But also they make something called DAP or diammonium phosphate, which is good. Some people don't like it because it has urea and stuff in it, but I mean, some of your $100 bottle winemakers make it. Most everybody uses it. It's accepted. It's not bad. Um, there's also some Fermax, Fermaid. They make a Fermo if you want to go organic and you don't want to deal with urea and some of that other stuff. There's a Fermo that you can use as well. But you can also use boiled up yeast. You can boil some yeast and use that, or you can get bran flakes. The bottom of a bran flakes cereal, all that fine stuff that makes good nutrients. But your yeast will need some nutrients to, especially in your sugar washes. If you do grains, you're not going to need it because a lot of your malted grains have a lot of that, all that nutrients that you're going to need. But like for some of your brandies with fruits, they're not going to have the needed nutrients in it. So, adding some nutrients to your sugar wash. Thank you, Mr. Aubrey, for mentioning that. Yeah, you definitely want to add that. And if you're, I wouldn't do the tomato paste like in a brandy, but like in a vodka or any kind of sugar, just straight sugar or something like a rum. Yeah, throwing some of that in there is great because it has a ton of essential micronutrients and stuff that really help your fermentation. It makes your yeast happy, and that's what we want. Keep them yeasties happy. Good to see you in here, Mr. Aubrey. Another Kentucky boy. Now, I'm not Phil Billy. I'm Bad Santa. Phil Billy, you can see him on Friday nights. He'll come on the shit show with us. But he runs his YouTube channel and all that, and he's the creator of the Moonshine Militia. So he's the prez. But yeah, man, that 50-liter jacketed, that sounds awesome. Look forward to hearing your results. So this is the first time you've tried with the beans. Oh no, that wasn't you doing beans. Oh yeah, okay, it's Marcel. So it's the first time you've tried the beans. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit behind scrolling down. I'm trying to take these one at a time. So I had the corn 2-row and dark crystal malt. Now I tell you, when you use that dark crystal malt, of course Marcel knows, but I'm going to tell other people that you're not getting any diastatic out of that, so it's not going to help you as far as conversion. But man, there's a lot of flavor, and it's real easy to overdo because they are just like coffee crystals, man. It's just there's a lot of flavor that comes out of those. So especially your darker malts like that. So try to start with a lighter percentage and add a little bit each time till you get right where you want. Because like some people, if you do like even 10%, ooh, it can get really heavy. Brother, yeah, that's what we're here for, man. We're here to help everybody out and make everybody's runs a lot better and more successful. And once you learn it, hopefully you'll pass it on and keep it going. That's what we all want, is to pass our knowledge on to the next generation. So it was becoming a lost art. I'll have to admit there wasn't a lot of people doing it. And when that show came out, a lot of people don't like that show, but that show really did bring shine back to the forefront, in the cities and stuff where people never even talked about it. See, I grew up in an area where, it wasn't no big deal. Everybody did it. There's a lot of shiners and, nobody talked about it. It wasn't anything big deal. And most people it was just something you never really talked much about. But the show is definitely bringing it back and bringing it mainstream and getting a lot of people interested in it. And it's a lot of fun. And you'll get a lot of fun out of learning to make wines and beers as well. Learning to make wine will help you make you one of the best brandy makers, and learning how to make beer, minus some ingredients like hops, will end up, make you a really good whiskey maker. So, you can add those hobbies. You can make your beer, you can make your wine, and your whiskeys and your brandies. So it's a lot of fun. Sulfur had a little sulfur in it. So, if you're using copper, that's good. Another thing to look for is iron. We were talking about that earlier. Or Roger and I was, or somebody, but iron. So a lot of good limestone is great to have. It's got that natural buffer in it, which is why a lot of people like to use it, and why it was preferable. But sometimes it can have pretty decent amounts of iron in it, and that's what you want to kind of stay away from, and sulfur. So just make sure that if you have a pretty decent sulfur content, um, using coppers and copper mesh is going to become even more important. Ohio Blue. Yeah, that's some good stuff, man. That Ohio Blue is good and sweet. So definitely want to add that to your mix. It's a good combo to add with, just regular crack and regular yellow dent to give it a little more sweetness. But yeah, like Kim said, you can get at Tractor Supply. Now, I will tell you, when you buy your corn, if you get kernel corn, Blue Hopi, thank you for saying that. I'm that far behind. I'm sorry. Um, Blue Hopi, yeah, both good. I think they think Ohio Blue is a little sweeter than the Hopi, but with your yellow dent that you can get at Tractor Supply, I think it's best to buy it whole kernel and grind it up yourself. It's kind of like coffee. It's like getting some stale coffee, some of that cracked. You don't know when it got cracked. A lot of times, when they crack it like that, they know it's for, animal consumption. So they'll throw cobs in there, and sometimes some will spill out, and they'll dust it up in a dust, in a pan and throw it in there. And they know that's mostly going for chicken scratch and chicken feed. And so they don't really care what goes in it. But the kernel, it's usually a lot cleaner, and it keeps its freshness. Inside that kernel, you got that hard husk on the outside, and it'll keep it fresh inside there until you grind it up, and it's like fresh ground coffee, man. It is that much different than just using a cracked, unless you can get a good cracked fresh. I definitely recommend getting whole kernel and cracking it yourself, and it's perfectly fine. In fact, for beginners, I highly recommend starting there. And you start doing your conversions. Get your high temp alpha, learn to gelatinize it, learn what temperature. You got to get it at 190 degrees for 90 minutes or so until it gelatinizes. And that's just when those starches break up, and they you bust the cell walls of the cells that contain the starch, and it helps hydrolyze it. It gets it into a liquid state, and then you add your alpha amylase to that, and it breaks those long string carbs into smaller segments, and then your beta amylase or your glucoamylase that you're getting from your malts or from just adding it will help break those further down into a fermentable sugar, because your alpha will break those long strains of carbs into strands, they call it an oligosaccharide. And that's anywhere from like 3 to 12 molecules of glucose bonded together. And yeast can't eat that. They can't consume that. It's a sugar, but it's a sugar that's not fermentable. They can't eat it. So when you take that beta amylase or that glucoamylase, it takes those 3 to that'd be a trisaccharide all the way up to 12, which would make it almost a polysaccharide. But it breaks those up into single molecules or 2 molecules, and those are fermentable sugars, and that's the conversion process. So learn the conversion process, and how to use either a liquid alpha and liquid gluco, or using malted grains to help do your conversions. And that's definitely the way you want to go when it comes to that. You can just put cornmeal. I did it for decades with cornmeal and sugar and yeast, and just go. You don't have to do any conversions. You use the cornmeal as a flavoring. The sugar is what you're fermenting, and that's a sucrose. That's basically a fructose to glucose bound together. It's a disaccharide, and your yeast can eat that just fine. And it makes okay corn liquor. It's adequate. It's something you can drink. It's not the best, but once you learn to do the conversion, man, you'll really see the difference. It's like stale coffee versus freshly ground. You just get that richness and that flavor, and you're going to get that from a converted grain versus just a cornmeal sugar wash. They call it a thin mash. But yeah, thanks, Field and Creeks. Yeah, Hopi's the other blue corn I was trying to think of. I'm getting old, man. I'm starting to forget everything. It's getting old, boys. Dan likes that Argentine orange. Yeah, I heard you talking about that the other day in the podcast. I think he's talking to Fred and Mr. Aubrey about that Argentine orange. Yeah, it's good. There's a lot of good corns out there, and a lot of interesting flavors. There's an Amanda Palmer. There's just so many different corns, man. It's fun just trying all the different ones and trying combinations. My first sugar wash, I used turbo yeast. Turned out pretty good. Awesome. Turbo yeast, if it's an okay yeast to use. A lot of people, it's got mixed reviews. Some people like it, works okay for them. Some people don't like it. They don't like the flavors it brings or whatever. Sometimes depends on the turbo yeast too. Um, but a lot of the turbos were generally made for like vodkas and stuff that get highly distilled, and like a vodka, they take a vodka up to like 190 proof or more. And when you do that, you're pretty much taking out a lot of the flavor, whether it be good flavor or bad flavors, and you're making what's called a neutral spirit. And if you're doing those, turbo is cheap. It's very good. It will ferment about anything completely dry and all the way out. It's a high alcohol tolerance yeast. So if that's all you can get and use, and you're happy with the flavors you get from it, I'm not going to tell you to use anything different, but I will encourage you to experiment with different yeasts, because um, that will change the flavors a lot. Yeast has a lot to do with it. A lot of people say it doesn't, but once you learn, you learn. Once you know in the difference, and there's a lot of different yeasts. There's you can do the same exact mash with two different yeasts, and you'll notice the difference for sure. Some are more geared towards brandies, like your wine yeast. You'll want to use more of a wine yeast for your brandies. You'll want to use more of a distiller's yeast or something like that for your grains. For like meads and things of that nature. There's certain yeast out there like a Lalvin D47 that works really well with meads and honeys and things of that nature, and with your agaves. There's a lot of good tequila yeasts out there that are really good with tequilas and stuff. So there's specialty yeasts that will add some different unique flavors. So don't get caught up in all using one. If you just want to use one yeast, I would say Lalvin EC1118 is probably the single most commonly used yeast. It's very good at everything. It's probably the best at nothing. But it's the best at restarting stuck fermentations. It's really good for that. It handles a lot of alcohol content, so you can do it with just about anything. It has a good pH range, so it's not as easily stressed as a lot of specialty yeasts. And it has a good temperature range, so you're not stuck, trying to keep towards a higher, like your distiller's yeast and your baker's yeast tend to like, 80 to 90 in that range, and some of your wine yeast prefer the 70 to 80 range, mid 70s, and a longer fermentation. So knowing your yeast and treating your yeast good, feeding them well, keeping them from getting stressed really gives you some really good flavors. And I always thought that was the best, but once you get into some advanced distilling, there's certain ways that you can tweak the yeast at certain stages to stress them in certain ways that gives you a specific characteristic. Now it can backfire on you, but it can also give you some interesting depth and flavors. But I don't try to teach that. That's a little bit much for a beginner, to try to learn to do that. But there's little things that you can do once you get a little bit more advanced and want to experiment. There's a lot of things you can do to make unique flavors. What's up, Richard? Good to see you on here, brother. Fort Smith. You talking about Arkansas? Oh no. That's Missouri, right? Is that the one in Missouri? Fort Smith. I know the one. I think that's Missouri, right? I'll have to scroll down to see your answer because I'm way behind. But let me know, KRB. I'm thinking Fort Smith is that the Missouri one? And is that close to where Tall Pines Distillery is? I met them fellas. Those people, real nice people. We met those guys in Arkansas. If I'm not mistaken, I think they're out of Missouri. It's been a while. Welcome back, Phil. Now the 1118 and the 1116 yeast, they're both really good yeast. They're different. There's also Kveki yeast out there. There's also Yellow Label Angel yeast, and that's a different fungus entirely. So yeah, there's a lot of different yeasts out there. That Yellow Label Angel yeast is originally designed in the Orient. They used it with rice and to make sakis and to make some distillates with rice. And with the rice like that, they use this Yellow Label, and they don't have to convert the starches in the rice. This yeast actually does the conversion for you. So some people got interested in that. They're like, well, I wonder if that would work with grain as well. So they started experimenting with this Yellow Label Angel yeast, and sure enough, it would do grain conversions without having to actually gelatinize your corn. And or if you're using flaked, it was already gelatinized for you, and you didn't have to, add any amylase or any of that stuff. It would do all the conversions for you. Now it's is it Arkansas? Okay. I'm not sure if that is that the one we went to last year. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of, and I didn't drive. Maybe that. Yeah, that is the one. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's the one we went to last year in Arkansas. Yeah, it was a good one. Yeah, I got to meet Big Chuck down there, and Troy Landry was there, and Troy Halsey, was there. We all went down, and my buddy Wayne from Ozark was there. They had a pretty good crowd there. It was a good time. We're definitely going to try to make it for sure back down to that for sure. Yeah, that's another good one for sure. We had a great time down there. Good people too. I'm behind. I'm sorry. I had to scroll down to see what's answers when I ask them. Um, Fort Smith, yeah. All right, let's see here. A good question, Alex. How do you make Applejack liquor? Well, basically, when you make Applejack, and there's several different uh, methods of it, but it involves what's called freeze distillation. And basically, you're making a wine. You can make it with apple, or you can make it with other fruits. You can actually do it with anything you want to, but you're basically what you're doing is you're taking your mash and you're trying to separate a lot of your solids out, of course, first. So your yeast bed, you wait for it to finish fermenting, and your yeast and your cap and everything will drop down. you skim whatever's on the top off, and you just rack it. You just siphon it. So you try to siphon it to where you don't get any of the yeast from the bottom into a bucket or whatever you want to freeze it in. And then you can put it in a freezer if you have a walk-in freezer, or if you're in a place where it gets real cold. Or if you got a big chest freezer, you can put your liquor, your bucket of mash or wine, into a frozen environment. And what happens is all the water that's in that mash will start freezing. So you can just reach in there literally and pull the ice out and just pitch it, and it leaves a higher percentage of alcohol behind because you're just removing the water from the alcohol, which is basically what the distillation process is doing, right? That's how you're concentrating your alcohols, you're removing the water from it. So you can, you just do this with your Applejack. You set it outside or in a chest freezer, and you just keep pulling the ice off and try it, and you just keep doing that until you get to a decent percentage, or a fortified wine, basically what you're making. But when you get to about where you like it, you can stop doing it, bottle it up, and it makes a pretty stout little apple liquor. So that's just freeze distillation, and you're basically just freezing off the water out of a wine, and that works real well. I've done that before. What about mixing your mash while it's working? Good, awesome questions. What you want to do when you first start your mash, you want to oxygenate that mash as much as you can. So I use a mud mixer that they use for drywall mud on a big drill, and I get that down in there, man, and I'll work it. I'll chop the surface up. I'll try to get as much oxygen in there as I can. And the reason being is a heavily oxygenated atmosphere like that, it increases the breeding cycles of your yeast. So when your yeast are in an oxygen rich environment, they want to breed, because that's just, that just, I don't know, it's like an aphrodisiac for your yeast, I guess. But when they're in an heavy oxygen environment like that, and there's a lot of oxygen, they just go crazy and they start breeding like crazy. So it's great to have that at the very beginning. That way you get a good amount of yeast built up. And then once that happens, the oxygen levels will start dissipating. The bubbles will go away. They'll pop and float up to the surface and pop. And then you'll have a cap, and your cap will help trap some of the CO2 underneath there and let your oxygen on through. And so after the first day, you really don't want to stir your mash up after that, because you went from an aerobic environment, which is a lot of oxygen, which is an aerobic environment, which is great for the yeast breeding. But after that, you want to go into what's called an anaerobic environment. And the reason you want an anaerobic environment is because a lot of bacteria requires oxygen to breed. And you're wanting to discourage those bacteria from multiplying and spoiling your mash, because basically a fermentation is a controlled rot. A lot of the amylases and stuff we use, that's just natural in a lot of fruits and vegetables and stuff. That's just the natural process. When you see a banana turning black, that's just natural amylase converting a lot of the sugars in that into breaking them down, and it's just a controlled rot. So when you can decrease that oxygen and the acid levels, like I say, starting at around a 5.3. So you're creating an acidic environment that has little to no oxygen, and that's not very conductive for bacterial growth. They like both. So if it's in a dark place that has no oxygen and you have a higher acidic content, some people use airlocks just for that reason, to help get all the oxygen away, and basically the airlocks help keep oxygen out, and it also helps keep the damn the fruit flies out of it. So but you don't really have to use the airlocks. You do if you're wine making and if you're doing advanced brandies, because they're going to be fermenting for quite some time. But like for mashes and stuff like that, it's not really required. It's nice to have. It's nice to do. Um, but for like some of your grains, those are fermenting in 4 or 5 days and ready if all the conditions are right. So you don't. There's not a big risk for a lot of bacterial buildup in something that quick. But just gently, what you want to do instead of stirring it up, excuse me, after your first day, is gently when you get that cap developed, you just gently push that cap down and keep it moist, and the alcohol content from your mash on that cap, what we call a cap, the alcohol will keep a lot of your bacteria killed off as well, and the moisture will help hold in some of the CO2 and keep it built up underneath that cap, and it makes a better environment for it, and it just makes for a better fermentation, and you don't get spoilage from some bacterial builds up that can actually ruin things. So excellent question. Well, hold on, I need to sorry, I didn't want to cough in everybody's ear. Good question. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, Bam Bam, brother. I know. How do you know if a sugar wash is doing good or if I need to test pH level and all that? Um, Basically, with a sugar wash, you're going to want to buffer it with your oyster shells or with something. They make a commercial stuff that's basically calcium carbonate, and it's an expensive crushed up oyster shell. So I'm going to try to save you money. Just buy a bag of oyster shells. If you do gardening, it's great to add to your garden. Your tomatoes love it. Your peppers love it. So it helps those too. Um, but those will help, keep your pH where you don't have to worry about it and test it so much. You don't have to. But I use the strips. A lot of people buy these pens, electric pens and stuff. I bought dozens. I mean, I'm not dozens, but I probably bought about 8 or 9 of those, cheap yellow pens with the black tops, and they work great for a few months and maybe a year, and then you're having to calibrate them all the time and buy the solution to calibrate them, and then eventually they just quit working. They're cheap, they're like 10, $12. You throw it away and you get another one, and it might last you a few months or a year, and I just got tired of calibrating them and doing all that. So I bought the pH strips, and I used what's called, it's kombucha strip. And the kombucha is basically a fermented tea that a lot of people are making these days, and it's interesting. And use a SCOBY, but that's a different topic for a different day. But they make a pH test strip for those, and the range for those is like 0 to 7. So that's dealing in the pHs that we also deal with in making beer and wine and grains and mashes and stuff. So it's perfect for that. A lot of the pH strips you get are for like swimming pools, and they go from 0 to 14 or some shit like that. And there's such a large spectrum, it's hard to dip them in it and get a decent reading. But these that are made for kombucha, I think I get them on Amazon. It's like $12 for a roll of them. I think Empyrean or something like that's the name of the people that make the one I get. There's a couple of them on there, but it's just a roll of strips. You just pull out a little bit, maybe a half inch, tear it off. I use little tweezers, dip it down in the mash, and it'll come up with a color. It's easy to read. You can put it on the chart that's on the roll there on the cover, and you can get your reading. It's not as exact, but we really don't have to be that exacting. We just want to know, is it above 3? Is it still okay? Or, do I need to add baking soda? Did I not put enough eggshells in it or something like that? So, it's handy to have that. Again, not 100% necessary. There's been people making awesome moonshine for long, 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 but that's generally with grains and not sugar washes. So, when you're doing the sugar wash, you have a tendency for the pH to crash. And if you don't have enough of those eggshells in there, or you don't use them, you're more than likely going to get a crash. And it's good to know when it crashes and when you need to add some baking soda. The baking soda is not really good on your yeast. There's sodium in there. That's a sodium bicarbonate. and that sodium, it irritates the hell out of the yeast, so they don't like it. So they can give you some off flavors when you use it, but sometimes you just don't have a choice because getting really acidic is going to stress that yeast a lot more than the sodium stings it. So, yeah, good question. Would throwing instant coffee and dry creamer in the thumper with sugar create a coffee taste that would be better than just plain coffee? Absolutely. I mean, yeah, you can do a lot of experimenting and stuff like that. Mark Morgan does a good coffee shine, and he infuses coffee and uses it in his thumper and his jar rigs and stuff, and it's good. I mean, I drank a quart of that at Maggie Valley, man. That's some good stuff, man. That was going down too damn easy, and I'm not a big coffee drinker, so I really liked it, and it's easy to drink a lot of it. It's got that caffeine in it, and so it's a speedy drunk, and whew, yeah, you can drink a lot of that stuff. It can get dangerous, but I like it. It's good stuff. But yeah, you can experiment with different things in there. Sure can, man. That's the beauty of this, man. There's just no rules. There's certain things that you can do that make it better. And there's certain things you can do that's going to make it worse. But a lot of times, better and worse is an opinion. And it's, some people like it certain ways. Some people would spit it out, and say it's horrible. That's why, there's so many different bottles on the shelf because everybody has a little bit different tastes and stuff. Just got a good steal from Phil Billy. Done a few on a stainless verver. Yeah. And wanted to up my game. Uh, just want to do brandies. Awesome. Well, having copper for your brandies is probably the best thing because brandies can tend to get a little bit of sulfur build up in them, especially like grapes and plums. I do both of those a lot, and those can be sulfurous, especially the dark grapes and your dark plums and some of your darker fruits can be a little bit more sulfurous. So having that copper certainly helps a lot when you're doing those, or like we were talking earlier, using that copper mesh, that'll help a lot too. But um, yeah, there's nothing better than copper, but it's expensive. It's got some maintenance, but for the heat dissipation, the way the heat transfers in it, it's less likely to get hot spots and scorch, and heat transfers heat a lot better, holds heat better, and definitely removes some of your sulfurs. Yeah. It's right. It's like wrestling. There's some things on there that's true, but most of it is kind of make believe and a lot of fun. It's a lot of drama and fun. It's Yeah, but it is helping. Keep a lot of people interested. It's helping the hobby, and it's bringing a lot of people into it. And then when they seek the knowledge, they don't go there for it. So they start coming to us. And but there are some very knowledgeable people on the show. JJ's very knowledgeable. Amanda's very knowledgeable. Mark and Digger are a lot more knowledgeable than they let on. They had that lacto infection a few weeks ago, and they're acting like they never seen nothing like that before. Them boys, they've been doing it as long as they have. They did it with JB and popcorn and all them years, many moons ago. They've been doing it that long. They've run into lacto before, so it's all just drama for the show and a lot of fun. But a lot of those guys on the show, they're pretty knowledgeable. They know their stuff. So especially like Manda, JJ, Mark and Digger, Tickle, they know. They're a lot more knowledgeable. The Law brothers, they've been shining forever. There's a lot of knowledge on there, but a lot of it's just drama for the show, and it's just fun to watch. Some people, it's not everybody's cup of tea. Making your first run, awesome, brother. Well, we hope it turns out well. If you got any questions, jump in, Facebook on the militia and join us and ask you questions, or find us here on Wednesdays and Fridays and Saturdays, uh, and 8 o'clock, and we'll try to help answer any question you got, brother, and hope everything works out, man. What do you got going on, Bon? So don't use barn lime as a buffer. Yeah, you can use lime. Yeah, absolutely. Pickling lime, is that what you're talking about? Like a pickling lime? Absolutely. You can use that as well. I'm pretty sure that's calcium carbonate as well. If not, it might be like a potassium carbonate. I can't remember. But both, yeah, pickling lime works just fine. I just like the crushed eggshells because they're just so cheap, and there's so much of them there, and you can bag them up, you can rinse them off and reuse them, and you'll just never. Once you buy a 12-pound bag or 15-pound bag or whatever, unless you use a bunch of them in your gardening like I do, I crush them up and add them in my soil, and it helps your tomatoes, keep from getting bad spots on them, and the peppers like it too. So, um, yeah, but yeah, you can use pickling lime for sure. Absolutely. I invert sugars too, brother. Yeah, I like to invert the sugars. What he's talking about inverting sugars is sugar. Table sugar is a disaccharide. It's got a molecule of glucose and it's got a molecule of fructose. They're bound together, and that bond is called a glycosidic bond, and it's a hard bond to break. But yeast will eat that disaccharide. It's two molecules together, so your yeast can eat it. They have trouble with threes. A lot of threes they can't eat, which is a trisaccharide. But anything above a three, they can't eat unless it gets broken down for them. They just can't wrap their math around it. But a disaccharide they can, but they really love single molecules of sugar, a single glucose, a single fructose, or something like that. They really like those single ones because they can just eat away at those, and it makes them happy and happy yeast. We want to keep them happy. So a lot of times, a lot of pastry chefs and stuff, they found that when you invert sugars and a sugar inversion, I guess when you look at sugar in some of your, here's my memory. Somebody help me. It's the scopes that you look in. Man, my mind. Anyway, there's a scope that you can look in that shows the sugar content, and a lot of bartenders use it because it'll give you alcohol content, and it tells you how much sugars you got in as well. But when you invert the sugar, it reads it upside down, and basically when you invert sugar, you're breaking that glycosidic bond, and you use citric acid, and you have to bring it up. You bring your sugars up to a certain temperature. You got a certain amount of water, and you bring it up to, I think it's like 237 or something like that. It's a little bit above like a water boiling temperature, but you're cooking off all the water out of that sugar, and you add citric acid to it, or you can add some lemon juice. I use citric acid, but you use an acid, and that temperature and that acid will break that glycosidic bond, and you'll make two sugar molecules from one disaccharide. You'll get a monosaccharide, and the yeast love that monosaccharide, man. A lot of people will just use what's called dextrose, and that's just single molecule of glucose, and it's a corn based um, sugar, and that works really well too. But it's expensive, so a lot of people use that inverted sugar. And believe it or not, when you invert sugar, it tastes sweeter than table sugar, which is a sucrose. So it's really sweet, and the yeast love it, and it makes for a really good, quick, good conversion, and without a lot of stress on your yeast. Good point. So just going to see my question and skip over it. I'm sorry, Timmy, brother. Let me look. I'm scrolling back. Okay. Just got a good steel from it. Done a few stainless steel and wanted to up my game. Just want to do brandies. Well, I didn't get the question. It maybe you asked it before that. I'm sorry, I didn't see your question in that. Let me scroll back. Oh, I see. I'm sorry. when doing a brandy run, it's just one run, no stripping, run correct. Uh, yeah. Generally with brandies, it's just a one run, and you don't want a high proof run. But there's no right or wrong. So I'm not going to say that's not the right way to do it. Nobody does it that way because there's no right or wrong when it comes to a lot of these things. You'll experiment and you'll find what you enjoy best. Generally, for me, when I do brandies, I don't do stripping runs and stuff like that. I do sometimes I'll do a double run, um, but generally I'll do a single run, and I try to make it to where my proof doesn't get too high. So I'll take any kind of column off. I'll come straight off my steel into an elbow and go into an infuser and then infuse some flavors if I'm infusing. If not, I go straight into a condenser. You want to keep that proof down, if you can keep it down to 120 or so, 120 or 30. You'll get a lot of water carrying over with your alcohol, and a lot of that flavor will be bonded to the water. A lot of the flavors they don't really bond to the alcohol well, but that water does, and that water will carry those flavors that are bonded to it over with the alcohol that it's bonded to. So, and that's a covalent bond, and it's a pretty tough bond to break. So yeah, you'll get a lot of that flavor, and that's how you get a really good flavored brandy. Um, a lot of people will take it a step further, and they'll use what's called jar rigs, and Phil Billy's got those as well. You come straight out. You don't want a big column, or you don't want to use anything a big huge head like a whiskey head or none of that, because you get a lot of reflux when you're using a column or those big whiskey heads, because that's a lot of surface area, and that big whiskey heads are cold. The air temperature keeps them cool. So when a lot of your steam hits that big whiskey head, it condenses back down into your steel, and it redoes it, and that helps get your proof up for like a whiskey, if you're going to try to get it, to a little higher proof, so you can proof it down to a barrel strength. But with your brandies, you want to keep as much water coming forward with it as you can, because that flavor carries over. And if you get like a jar rig, you can infuse more flavor to that water that's getting carried forward, and really, crank up your game a notch with how much um, extra flavor that you'll get out of those char rigs. I'm sorry, Timmy. I didn't mean to skip over you, brother. It's hard to keep up with a lot of these questions, and I get behind, and I try to get caught up, and sometimes I ask a question and I have to scroll all the way down to see what somebody answered, and then I try to scroll back up to find their question. So sometimes I can jump over, but that's another good reason to join the militia, because if I don't get your questions, on the militia, you can ask them, and I'll try to answer them, or a lot of other people will, or Copper Steel Outlaws, or DIY Shine and stuff. All those great groups, great people. I admin and all of them. So we don't deal with people that are belittling and talk down to people and talk shit, and a lot. You get a lot of trash talkers on the internet these days, and we keep them out. We get them out of there. So jump on there, ask any questions you got. And I'm sorry I missed your question, brother. I hope I answered it. If you have any more, let me know. I end up finding some farmers, so you get fresh corn already shucked and bucked, and just making cornmeal until I get a different grinder. Well, that's perfect, brother. You just convert it and go with it. If it's fresh, it's fine that way. It's just it doesn't store a long time that way. But I agree with Chris. Yeah, slow. Sometimes though, it depends. Sometimes when you run a little faster, you get a little bit more water carrying forward with the flavors. So sometimes it's beneficial to not run low and slow. And so with my brandies, um, especially if I don't have a lot of any, particles in there. So if it's kind of like milky and stuff, you definitely want to run those slow. But if it's a good clear wine that I'm making the brandy from, and it's got good clear clarity, and it's racked properly, and it takes a long time to get it that clear, then I'll run it harder. And when you run it harder, you get a little bit more water coming over, so you can get more flavor carrying forward. So yeah, there's different in different speeds. You know, you'll learn as you go. Certain things need to go low and slow for sure, and that's generally by rule the way to go. But sometimes with certain things, you can crank the heat up a little bit, go a little bit faster, and get some more water to carry over. Sometimes you don't want that water to carry over, and it just depends on the distillate that you're making. Good point, Chris. What's a good bourbon yeast? I like Daity. You know, is a good grain yeast. Daity works really well. That's DADY, dried active distiller yeast is the acronym. Red Star makes it. It's a good overall yeast for grains, and that's what I tend to use. Fleischmann's bread yeast. A lot of people, you know, turn their nose up at it. Oh my God, using bread. I use bread yeast for a long time, and I love the flavor of it. And you'd be surprised, you know, how many commercial outfits out there still use bread yeast. It's got a good flavor. But the Daity yeast is a really good yeast, good all around yeast, and probably it's been designed for it. It's geared towards a grain, and it works real well. It works real well. But there's other yeast to experiment with. You know, there's a lot of people like using that Kveki yeast. Uh, and with the grains and stuff, and it just gives different flavors, different notes, different flavor notes. So it's good to experiment, but you can't go wrong with a good Red Star Daity, you know, just to get going. And Monty agrees. What's going on, Ken? Glad you joined us. Oh, so this is a different one then. Yeah, is this like the second year that Cyrus has done this? Yeah, Cyrus is a great guy, man. If y'all haven't watched his stuff, he's off the gritter. He has a lot of great YouTube videos and stuff. He and I are admins in a lot of different groups together. Great guy, very very knowledgeable guy, and you know, great guy to hang with and talk to. I've yet to meet him in person, but definitely looking forward to the day that we do. He seems like a really great guy, and we work together in some of the different shine groups, and he's admin in some of the ones that I'm adminning as well. And yeah, he's a good dude. So I'm gonna have to scroll down to get the answer. Is this his first or second year with that festival? And October 4th, that seemed no. The other one in Arkansas is closer to Halloween because in that town, and I can't remember this, it's horrible that I can't remember things, but they used to do it the day after Halloween. So it used to be, you know, like November, the first weekend of November or the first weekend after Halloween. And they used to do this Halloween. They have a big Halloween festival. And I think this year they changed the date a little bit because of that Halloween festival, or it's going to be just a 1 day event this year. Yeah, because it's going to be Halloween is falling on a Friday, I think, this year, and they're going to do a Saturday festival in that town of Arkansas. And what is Clinton, Arkansas is where that one is. So, yeah, but I'm not sure how long is this. Help me out here. It's his first one. Okay, thanks for the answer, brother. Yeah, so that'll be definitely another good one to go to and support our brother down there. Cyrus, great dude, definitely a very knowledgeable, good guy. And I like it off the grid kind of stuff. If I wasn't so damn old and have health issues, I'd do that off the green grid stuff too. Um, but I guess when you're young, let that be a lesson to you, boys and girls. When you're younger, get that farm, live on that farm, plant all the trees and bushes, and don't get old and regret because when you get old, that's when you want to move to the city closer to the hospitals and the doctors, because you spend a lot of time going to them, and you get so damn old, it's hard to do all that anymore. But so if you got land and you're thinking about it, don't think anymore. Just do it. Plant all the fruit trees, peach trees, plum trees, fig trees, start you some grapevines along your fences, blackberry bushes, blueberries, plant everything you can. You know, a lot of that stuff you can clone it and propagate it, and just, yeah, if you got land and you're a little bit younger, don't waste any time. Just do it. You'll never regret it. And if nothing else, it'll help bring game in when you go hunting anyway. So on corn mash, what causes calm yeast? Now you can come in here and throw something like that at me. Are you talking about a wild yeast, or are you talking about like a smut growth, or I'm not KAHEM? I'm have to say I'm not that familiar, but I will Google that. So I know what the hell you're talking about. I'm thinking you're talking about maybe a wild yeast or something. Calm yeast, harmless natural yeast that can appear on the surface of fermenting liquids and foods, often looking like a thin, white, creamy layer. Sounds almost like a lacto. That's actually something new to me. I guess it's a wild yeast, and I guess it's talking like powder. There's a lot of different wild yeast, so this is just another one of them. There's so many. There's so many different varieties of wild yeast and stuff. So like grapes, a lot of vegetables and fruits you'll get with like a powder looking on them, and this calm is probably just another one of those what they call wild yeast. Um, Wild yeast can be hit or miss. A lot of your commercial wineries and distilleries uh, will heat everything up. They pour boiling water over a lot of the fruit and stuff because they don't want to deal with them. Because a lot of your wild yeast can be hit or miss. They can actually give you some excellent flavors. And if you're in a specific area that you've experimented and you know that the wild yeast and they tend to hang, so if you've got a certain wild yeast in a certain area, they tend to be dominant. And if it's actually one that's good, you can kind of go with it. They work off fast. For the most part, they work off really quickly, and they're vigorous. But sometimes they won't finish it out all the way. So you'll still sometimes when they're done, you'll still have some sugars that you can ferment out a little further. So you can ferment, supplement your ferment with some additional yeast after those take their toll on the sugars and convert what they can. You can supplement it after that. Um, so a lot of commercial ones, though, they don't want to gamble with it because they just have too much invested in 5,000-gallon vats of wine or beers or whatever they're making for their distillates. So they can't really experiment. They can't take that risk. Us with hobby, in very small amounts, we can, and you can come up with some really, really good, interesting flavors. A lot of people will propagate their yeast. Once they find a good wild yeast, they'll go in, they'll swab it, and they'll bring it back and they'll put it in a yeast brink or copper donnas. Some people make little copper kettles to propagate their yeast in. They call them copper donnas. I think Alan Bishop, he does a lot of that. And a lot of people will propagate those wild yeast, and they'll use that in once they get a good one, they'll use that for their fermentations and stuff and get some unique flavors out of them. But I'm glad you mentioned that. That's just another wild yeast that I'm not familiar with, but there's a lot of different strains of wild yeast, and that's another one of them. What is the max temperature on boiler and head temp on a reflux steel? Well, I mean, there's no right or wrong answer. What type of reflux are you talking? Are you talking about a column? Are you talking about using a deflegmator? Are are you talking about the liquid temps, or are you talking about the vapor temps? So it also depends on, are you talking about a fractional distillation type column, or are you talking about a pot still? There's a lot of questions that, and I'll have to scroll down and find your answer. But there is a chart. A lot of people have the misconception that in like a pot still that you can go 175 degrees and cook off all the ethanol because it boils off at 173.1. And that's not the case, because you have to deal with azeotropes and bonding, and there's a lot of other alcohols and esters and things in there, isopropyls, other things, propanol, that are bonded, and they each have different boiling points. And when you mix them all together with water, which is also azeotropic, the boiling points change. So it really depends on what type of steel you're talking about, whether it's a continuous column, if it's just a column with a bunch of plates, or you're using a deflegmator, or just a straight tall column. Are we talking pot temps or vapor temps? So there's a lot of different temperatures to deal with. But actually, on this laptop, generally I have, let's see if I can find that chart. I sent it to some people, and let me see if I can dig it out of one of my comments from them. I'm on a laptop that I don't have all those files, but I think where I sent it to a bunch of people last week. Let me find one of them here. I think I sent some to Joseph. Let me see if I sent them to him. Yeah, here, the mash. No, I sent him the mash bill. Let me see. Bear with me. But I've got a chart for you that may be helpful. You sound advanced, so it may be something that you've seen before and already know. So, but I want to put it out there for everybody to see so they'll understand what we're talking about. Let's see. Who else did I send that to? Yeah, let's see. I think I sent a bunch to Monty. No, let's see. Yeah, here we go. Let's see if I can save that to pictures. Yeah, let me put that there. Now let me open that in here. Okay, now let's see if I can make that bigger and me smaller. Yeah, very good. All right, now if you look at this chart, if you look right over here, this is temperatures. This is the temperature of the alcohol, and you'll notice this is the percentage. So this is the ABV of the alcohol. So it goes up to 100, which is percent, not proof. So that 100 would actually be 200. You'll notice it stops a little shy of that, and that's because it's really difficult to get to 200, because alcohol or ethanol is what's called hygro, and that's HYGRO, hygroscopic, and that it absorbs moisture out of the air. So it's basically cutting itself down when it touches the air. You can make it in a vacuum and you can make it to 200, but as soon as you open that lid up and it touches air, it's like a desiccant. It starts sucking moisture out of it, the air, and it'll cut itself down. So generally 198-ish is what's given, and that's why it stops just short of that 100% there. But you'll notice if you go over here, there you are, that 173.1. So if you have pure ethanol with no water, no propanol, no esters, none of that other azeotropic compounds, you you'll boil off at 173.1. So when it's very dangerous to boil alcohol off at that temperature, but yes, it will boil off at that 173.1. But you'll notice as you start adding water, propanol, other alcohols, and the proof comes down, the boiling point increases. So if you come over here, you'll find that I can't see this. It's so small on this laptop, and if you're on a phone, you might have trouble seeing it too. But over here, you get around 8, 10, 12%. And that's about, unless you're using tails, that's about what an average mash is going to be. Probably a little bit less than 10 or 210. I think if you're 1.070, you're going to be a little less than 10%. So you're going to be over here. Now, if you take it up, you're going to start out at around 196 to 198, depending on how much water. A little cooler, 192 ish, with a little, higher alcohol content. So somewhere in this range right here, this is about where you can, on a pot still, you can about expect your ethanol and everything to start boiling off. A lot of people say, "Oh, I distill it all off at 180 degrees." Well, bro, you ain't unless it's on a pot still, unless it's got a high alcohol content. Now, they're also in distilling. There's continuous stills, and there's also stills that fractionally distill. That's a more advanced topic, and most hobbyists don't have that type of still. But when you do, it's got columns and it's got plates, and as the alcohol works its way up the column, it tends to be more volatile as it goes on up. So the higher you go, the lower the boiling point of the alcohols that are in it. So, your most highly volatiles, probably your methanols, are going to be at the top of the still, and you'll see a pipe coming out from that, so they can separate that out. And a little bit below that, you'll run into more of your ethanols, and below that, you run into your propanols, and so you can fractionally distill and separate it that way. But that's advanced, and I don't know of anybody that doesn't have a commercial, huge 100,000, really expensive commercial type steel that does the fractional distillation in that way. But so there's a lot of different answers to that question. Pot steel, your temperatures are going to be 192 to 196, 198, depending on in the range of here, depending on the content, alcohol content, and the water content. And that's just for your typical mashes. It'll fall right into this range right here. So, when people say they're cooking off at 180, they must have a lot of alcohol in there before they can do that. I hope I answered your question, Kim. Sounds like you got a pretty good knowledge. Why don't you join us, man? Maybe you can help help people out and get on Facebook and join the group, and maybe you can help some people. Oh, Kim Hayes. Oh, you are. Is this? I guess this is you. Oh, I'm glad you jumped down. Yeah, join the militia page, Kim, and we'd love to have you. And seems like you're fairly knowledgeable. And if not, we can help you. But sounds like you have pretty good knowledge. Jesse Evans, and I will get. You probably answered some of my questions, Kim. Let me drop down and see if you did. I hate jumping back and forth like this, though. It's tough for me. Short tension span. I get off on tangents talking about stuff, and before I know it, I'm not answering somebody's question. They went to bed. Oh, okay. Well, who's they? Refractometer. Thank you, Jesse. I just got that answer. Yeah, the refractometer is what we were talking about earlier. That shows the inverted sugars upside down. And a lot of bartenders use those because you can still get a good reading with an alcohol that's got sugar in it, where a hydrometer won't work. Once you get alcohol and you start adding sugar to alcohol, the hydrometer can't measure the density properly anymore. So you have to use one of those. What's the best startup steel to get for a beginner? It depends on space, your wallet, um, how serious you are about being in the hobby. Are you doing it just for fun, or are you doing it because you want to produce some alcohol to drink with you and your buddies? Um, if you've got a pretty deep pocket, you can't go wrong with a 20-gallon copper steel or a 30-gallon copper steel. You can get a good volume out of those and make it worth your trouble. A lot of people start out with like a 2 or 3 or 5 gallon steel, which is awesome. They're real cheap. You can get them, stainless, get them real cheap. The problem is on those, it's really difficult to make cuts. It's much more difficult to make your cuts. And, when you got a 5 gallon steel, you're generally running about 3 gallons of liquor, and you're not getting much good heart liquor out of something that small. So it's a lot of work for just a little bit of reward. And a lot of times people will spend money on that because they don't have a lot of money to spend. And then they realize how little alcohol they're getting on it. And the next thing you know, they're buying a 10 or a 15. So I highly recommend somebody starting out with minimum 10. The Vever, if you don't have a deep pocket, those Vever football steels are a great investment. It's a decent little stainless pot. It's got a good lid, and it has what's known as a sanitary ferrule on there. And on those, I think it's a 2.5. So it's a pretty decent orifice. You got a pretty decent size for your steam vapor to come out of. A lot of steels have like a 1/2 inch pipe, and it builds up pressure in your pot. And when you build up pressure, you're building up temperature, and a lot of times it can run away from you and get away because you got that increased pressure and temperature, and it will drive up the temperature, and it'll try to work off faster, and which can be good or bad, but it can get a little harder to make cuts when you got pressure temperature swings like that. um, but I like the little Vevers. They're great. The football steel. You can open up that football. You can pack some of that copper mesh I've been talking about inside there to take out some of your sulfides, and the little canister condenser on them are okay. You'll get some blending or smearing with those if they have a little bit of a negative slope. The one I got did. I used one of those inside in the wintertime when I can't do anything outside in my bigger pots. And they're fun to use, and you can use them on the stove. I got an infrared glass surface stove, and it works really well. And it does a fine job. It's not the best. It's not a copper steel, but it just depends on what your wallet is. If you got money and you can afford it, you can't really beat a good copper steel. But if you're on a budget, those football steels, I think they're a little over 200, 220 on eBay and Amazon. I think Home Depot had them for sale last year for like $150. It's like I don't know if it's a Black Friday. I think it was Black Friday the year before last. They were $150. So a lot of people jumped on that. That was an excellent deal for the 18.5 gallon. I think that's 70 liters, if I'm not mistaken. And those are a pretty decent size steel. It's a little bit bigger than a keg. Keg steels are great. They're cheap as fuck. It's got a 2-inch ferrule on the top. So you just have to take that Santa key out, be real careful, and you can use keg steel. I use keg steels for a long time. They make excellent little cheap steels, and you can put your little columns on those, and come out to your 2-inch pipe, go straight into jar rigs and all that. Phil Billy has all that you can get. Good jar rigs, condensers, coming off that with the 2-inch ferrules. And those sanitary ferrules are a lot better than like the compression fittings that you have to screw tight. These use a gasket and a tri-clamp, and they're easy to take apart and put together. They're easy to clean. They got gaskets that are easily replaced. Very versatile, and so you can do a lot with them. They're very convertible, so you can do a lot of different things with it. But I hope hopefully, Kim, that answered your question too about the max temperature. you really want to bring it up slowly. And once you first start getting a drip, and depending on the size of the steel, the smaller the steel, the slower the drip needs to be. The larger the steel, you can actually get to where you get a little bit of a trickle. And then, of course, when you get into much larger steels, it's coming out like a garden hose, and you get some of them big, huge, commercial, 1,000-gallon steels. Man, it's it's coming off pretty hard. It's like more than a garden hose. So it just depends. It's a scale. It sizes up. Used to use an airlock. Now I just do the cake on top, and I haven't done a cake long enough to find out which is the best. Yeah, you can you can just basically drape a towel and put the bucket lid back on it. Don't seal it up. It's got to be able to gas off. But basically, you want to keep the fruit flies and other things out of there. That carry acetobacters that can bring in vinegars and things like that, especially on your wines and brandies that you're going to secondary ferment for long periods of time. I definitely recommend an airlock for those. But for like grains and stuff, those are usually done in 4 or 5 days if the conditions are right, maybe a week or two, and yeah, you can definitely get those worked off quick, and you don't have to worry about the acetobacters and bacteria as much as you would if you're fermenting over a longer period of time. Common yeast has something to do with lactic acid and sugar, and yeah, the lactic acid it's a natural byproduct of most of your fermentations. You're going to get a lactic acid and several different other organic acids that are created. Certain things will create more than others. Um, Lactic acid, lactose, is the sugar in it, the lactose, and it can be a good thing or it can be a bad thing. You don't want a lacto infection early on because it will compete for the sugars that are in your mash with the yeast. So you don't want it consuming those sugars while your yeast is doing its thing. Generally, a lot of people will skim it and save a lacto and introduce it late in the fermentation, like when you're 1.020 or something like that. Then you can introduce your lactic acid and allow that to finish the rest of the sugars off and ferment it dry, and it gives it a creamy, soft notes that kind of a lot of times if you want to do like a peaches and cream and you've got a lactose, you can get that creamy flavor by adding your lacto late. Again, getting into more advanced distilling and stuff, but you have to control it. You have to clean everything well after that, or else you can run the risk of getting a lacto earlier, which can decrease the volume of alcohol that you get. It still has a good flavor and everything, but you'll you'll get less alcohol content. You won't get as much as you normally do, volume wise. Butyric, that's another acid that sometimes you'll get during, or you will always get, but different levels of, and that's like a stomach acid. And if you've ever had a mash smell like puke, like vomit, that's your butyric acid, and you don't want to run those when you get a mash like that. Don't pitch it. Wait it out. Let that vomit smell go away, and after that, it'll produce a really interesting drink that has some different congeners in it that it gives you some sweetness. So that's something that's good too. But as far as the lactic acid, I don't think that's what the common yeast is. That the common yeast is just basically it's a wild yeast. Now it may produce more lactic acids, and that's a good possibility because generally lactic acids, butyric acids, there's a whole host of what are considered organic acids, different amino acids that are produced in fermentations, but generally they're a little bit lower. They're not as dominant, but they can add some interesting flavors if you deal with them properly. If not, they can taste like vomit or take a lot of your alcohol up. Yeah, there's a lot of places you get your pH test strips. I use those kombucha ones. I get those on Amazon. It's like $12. It says 180 uses, and they tell you to use a whole inch of the strip. They just pull it out and tear it off. So I pull mine half-inch because I can see the color just fine. So I take out a half-inch instead of an inch, and I'll get 360 uses out of it that way. And I just dip it in with tweezers, and read it that way. How's it going, Quanell? Glad you joined us. I want to do a column with a keg as the boiler, but I really want it to be modular so I can upgrade my deflegmator conditioner. Absolutely. That's one of the beauties of the keg steels is that you have that 2-inch sanitary fitting on the top. When you do that, though, they make a special gasket for those. Most of your sanitary gaskets have ridges on both sides, but the one that you want to use with the keg has a ridge only on one side. So you'll put the flat side next to the keg and then the ridged side up that will go onto your spool or whatever you're attaching to that with a tri-clamp. So Phil Billy's got those, and they're specially made just for kegs, and you'll definitely want to get one of those. But yeah, you can get very versatile, just like those Vevers with that fitting on the top. That's why I recommend them, because it makes them so versatile, modular, that you can do so many things. And I wish I had pictures of some of my setups. It looks like a gasoline refinery. I've had some pretty interesting setups. Definitely drama sales. Am I that far behind? Oh my God. I hope I'm not skipping questions, but I'm gonna have to try to get further down. No, barn lime and sweet lime is what farmers call it, used in sauce. I guess it's like a hydrated lime. Is it same thing farmers use? I know pickling lime's fine, and a hydrated lime's fine as well. It's just crushed limestone. So that's the calcium, probably a calcium carbonate as well. I'm sure I'll be corrected. But yeah, those would be fine. Absolutely. But I just like the shells because it's so easily, but those are just as easy to get and probably as cheaper. But yeah. Yeah, any of that. But calcium carbonate seems to be the one that works really well. Calcium is an essential in the fermentation process anyway, so it's a necessity. Absolutely, those are all good for you. What's going on, Colton? Sorry, I'm so far behind. All right, Kimbo, brother. He's probably already gone by now, but take it easy, brother. What's up, Slacks? Yeah, man. Slacks knows a little bit of that science. Oh, better get him to bed, brother. Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of a lot of people don't know it, but a lot of winemakers buy bags of tannins, and it looks like sawdust, but it's not sawdust. It's literally tannins that have been leached out of wood and dried, and then they scrape the tannins off the surface of the dry, and once they're dried, and they're very interesting. I've got some chestnut tannins that I use in some of my dark wines and stuff. But yeah, a lot of the berries have tannins in your wood that you age in that will have tannins as well. Yeah, November 1st is Clinton, Arkansas. Yep. And I guess October 4th, KRB was saying, is Cyrus's. So definitely be good to go to both of those. There's some good shiners down there in Arkansas. I got a boss of mine. I'd love to see the guy. I hadn't seen him in probably 40 years. He David Smith is his name. He two-tour Vietnam vet. He lost one of his legs, lost a leg in a motorcycle accident. And when I was living in Florida, he ran a cable contracting business out of Jonesboro, CECC Cable Contractors out of Jonesboro, Arkansas. Great guy. I haven't seen him in 40 years. I'd love to run into him again. He's down there in Arkansas. I'm sure he's still down there. Great guy if he's still alive. He's an awesome dude. It's been a long time, though. Too long. I hope you're still on here, Marcel. Good night. I'm sorry I can't keep up with Chad. I get all these questions, and I want to try to answer them as best I can. And sometimes they come in a little faster than I can answer them. That's why I want everybody in the groups. So if we miss them, we can make sure we get to them in the groups. And yes, you can mix different yeasts. You can get some interesting results. Again, Monty, there's no rules other than a few in distilling, and that's just guidelines that you want to kind of follow to be safe. But the beauty of it, you can experiment. You can try so many different things and get different flavors, and yeah, absolutely. I encourage it. Try different things like that and let us know how it comes out. That's how everybody learns and comes up with new things. Absolutely. If you can make good wines, you can make good brandies. If you don't over distill it or burn it or scorch it or try to use too much column and deflegmators and take a lot of the flavor and characters out of it. A lot of people tend to do that. What's going on, Mr. Morgan? Where you been, buddy? You've been out catting around. Damn, I'm 30 minutes behind on that. Yeah. The wild yeast is a white film, and I think that's what Google was saying about that calm yeast is a white powdered yeast on it. And it would definitely, if it's on the fruit naturally or vegetables naturally, then it's considered a wild yeast. It's getting on there in the wild. A lot of people like to propagate wild yeast. A lot of people go to Alan Bishop goes to a lot of sites from old distilleries that are no longer there, that were around in the early 1900s, late 1800s, and some of these big old distilleries that are no longer there. He goes around and he'll collect wild yeast from around those places, and those yeast will still be living there after all these years. So yeah, it's interesting, getting into a lot of different yeast like that and propagating them and using them. Sure. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good problem to have, brother. That's a good problem to have. Yeah, a lot of people do, Chris. A lot of people boil it off to kill off all that bacteria and wild yeast and and just add the yeast that they know, and control the flavor that way. That's the way most people do, that don't want to experiment and just looking for a good result and a good drink, and they're not trying to create something new. They just want to replicate something that they know already. Yep. Yeah, I remember old Bam Bam. He and I talked about this years ago. We talked about going to different distilleries and taking a baggie, put a little bag in your pocket and get some cotton swabs. And, as you're walking around the distillery, just, nonchalantly take that little Q-tip out and rub it on a surface that's not clean and kind of pick up some of that yeast that they use, because they have some proprietary strains that's not available everywhere. So that's kind of a secret spy kind of way to get some interesting yeast. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Bam Bam went to quite a few distilleries. He's a yeast heister. You're welcome, Colton, man. I enjoy it. Hey, I'm getting so damn old. I may be asking you the same questions I'm answering today in a few years, man. I'm telling you, I'm forgetting everything, man. That's just simple words like refractometers and things like that. It's just escaping me. Getting old sucks, brother. So hopefully one of these days I might have to ask you what I once knew. You can help me. Yes, you can. Yeah, you can catch some wild yeast that way for sure. And sometimes if you do a lot of your mashing like inside, you got a little steel house or a shed or a storage building, and you do a lot of mashing there. It's not wild yeast. A lot of it's going to be daty or whatever you're using. It's going to be growing all over stuff. So, uh, yeah, you can get that. Yeah, it's definitely it makes it a lot funner. It can enhance your experience. You can dabble a little bit, and that's what it's all about. Is fun. What's my opinion on Popcorn Sutton? Wow, there's a question. I think Popcorn was a character who didn't give a fuck, obviously. Um, he was an old school distiller, um, knew a little bit of the science, don't kid yourself. Uh, Learned a lot through trial and error, like I did before, the internet, and a lot of help from other people and a lot of science. Um, I took science that I guess he didn't have the advantage of, but the internet's helped a lot, with research and stuff and having access to, the Distillery Institute and places like that can help you on the science end of it. But you don't have to have that. And that's, Popcorn. He understood a lot of the science. It was just through repetition and trial and error. He made good liquor. Some of his liquor still available. Um, Him and JB were quite the characters. He's legendary, for what he did. I guess that Johnny Knoxville helped make him more of a legend by putting his name out there. He went viral on YouTube and on social media, and he was quite well known. Before that, he was fairly well known, from the East Coast mostly, but people would travel from pretty good distances to come see him and talk to him and buy his liquor. He wasn't afraid of anything. He would distill liquor at in festivals at the park, and the local cops and everybody, they looked over it. They didn't really give a shit. But I guess after he went viral, he kind of got the attention of some of the feds, and they came and paid him a visit, and I guess the rest is pretty much history on that. He was too old to do some hard time, and he was about done with it anyway. He's getting old and tired like me, and I guess he just said, "Fuck it," I'm not going back in, and decided that he was going to go out a legend instead of going out a um, prisoner. So, sad story, real sad story, But he helped make moonshine lore and got a lot of people interested in it, and helped Digger and Mark and JB along with them, helped those guys learn a lot and taught them what they knew, and they're passing it on in their own unique way now with the show and everything. But I mean, was his liquor probably the best? No, it wasn't. I've tasted it. It's good shine, but there's better shine out there. But the fact that he made it is what really, makes it worth it. It's very hard to get. There's some of it that's not real out there. Of course, people are, Pam has some outfit that are making it with his recipe, so it's going to be a little different than what he had. But there is a lot of his stuff still out there. He was a barterer, and he would use his moonshine to buy stuff, and a lot of times he'd go to people and buy stuff, and they're like, popcorn, I don't drink that liquor, but I'll sure take it and trade, and they'd sell it, or they'd sit on it, and when they had guests come over, they'd share it with them. And so some of them had quite a bit of it built up, and so they're selling it now, and people know in that who has it in that community and who's legit and still has some of his stuff, and they're selling it. It gets a bit of a premium, but it's a unique bottle and it's a very limited thing. And if you could get some, it's something to have on your shelf to say you own a little bit of moonshine history. But it's a sad end. Yep, that's the way I made it for many, many moons. I'm sure you made it the same way, Bam Bam. Little old thin mash, and hell yeah, I made a lot of that. But that's why I like getting into a lot of brandies and stuff now. I've always just used the yellow pack bread yeast, and I've never had. Yeah, the bread yeast is just fine. Awesome. I'm glad. I've got a lot of other charts, Kim. So join the militia, and I'm adding to the files. I've got 4 or 5 charts that I've added to it recently. Some of them are like how many grams of fruit or sugar in certain fruits per 100 gram. General amounts of poundages of fruit to make wines. Those are generally if you're going to add sugar, though. They're not all fruit wines. Um, and different charts like that. I'm going to try to add some more to the groups. I've got literally thousands of recipes and other things I need to go through to kind of weed out bullshit from what's legit. And especially I like the recipes that break down the steps and not just give you ingredients, but they talk about how to do it and adding the boiling water to kill the wild yeast off if you want to, and things of that nature. And they're a little bit more educational, and it's just not 3 pounds this, 1 pound that, and throw in this, and you're not sure how to combine them. So for beginners, I like a little bit of the recipes that are a little more informational. That temp is the liquid temp. That was a good question, Richard. I should have pointed that out. That's the boiler temp. That's the temperature of the liquid inside the boiler itself. Now, a lot of people say, well, now you're lying because I took that boiler and I heated it up and I put a thermometer in that water, and and sometimes you'll get smoke on the water. What I call smoke on the water is just you'll get condensation because you have a high temperature here, a cool temperature of the air, and when you combine those, it's like fog on the lake. It's literally fog. So you'll get some of that. And people say, "Oh no, that's that methanol coming off early," and it's not. But also, people say it was 175, and I swear I was getting alcohol coming off. You probably were because you're measuring the temperature at the surface or in the middle, and then right down there at the very bottom where your pot meets the boiler, or I'm sorry, the heat source on the bottom of your boiler where it's really close to the heat source. That's probably 197 degrees down there. That where it's just coming into surface with that metal that's really really hot. So it's already at that temperature down there to start producing some alcohol, some ethanol boiling off. Absolutely. But that's just because if you stir it, it'll stop. But those bubbles at the bottom, that's because some of that's actually starting to boil off. And it's just because of the temperature difference, because it's going to be hot, really hot down there next to where the fire or flame or electric stove, or if you're using elements, then it's going to be right at the surface of those elements where it's going to be naturally a lot hotter. So you'll have that, and that's what people think. It's boiling off early, but it's actually really hot down there, and that's why some of that's coming off soon. Yeah, generally, yeah, you don't want to underfill a pot. Generally, you don't want to go. I'm sorry, you don't want to get too much headspace in there, and you definitely don't want to get too much in there because you get pukes over. If when you cook this up, it foams a lot, just like when you boil water at home. It'll foam up on you. Well, the same thing's happening inside your steel. A lot of people use a little butter to help keep that down. A lot of people will degas the mash to help keep it down. So that'll enable you to get a little bit more extra in there. But you don't want to have too little either, because you don't want to have a lot of headspace. So I'd say don't ever go um, below maybe 30%, 40% of the steel's volume, or you get too much headspace in there and it can cause some problems. Yep, definitely. Thank you, brother. I enjoy it. I'm big on using an Irish yeast on my whiskeys. I'm fond of that flavor it gives. Well, you're gonna have to share that shit with me, Bam Bam. What distillery did you get that from, my swab swiping friend? Oh, David, dance, call shots, brother. Everybody drink a shot. I'm sorry. I have to admit, I'm not drinking tonight. I'm not at home, and I don't have my shine, and I couldn't take it on the jet plane with me today, so I didn't have time to go to the liquor store. So I'm drinking freaking water. You believe that? That's why I'm not slurring by this point. It's almost 11 o'clock. See, and I'm not slurring. Normally, I'd be slurring a little bit by now, wouldn't I? Yeah, 5 to 18. It's a huge, huge jump, and it's so much easier to make cuts on your larger steels for sure. Yeah, that blender definitely puts out the proof. Yeah, it's just got a little condenser on the top. Nothing wrong with it. Absolutely nothing wrong with the stainless pot. And that with some of that, like we were talking about, little copper mesh, take out any sulfides, and they do just fine. I've run both, but now I'm pretty much stainless. With copper mesh, and that's just because I'm too damn cheap to spend a bunch on a copper steel. But I'm going to build one. I got me a big sheet of copper. I'm gonna build me a 30 or 40, because I've got like an 18 and a half stainless. I got 15-gallon kegs. I got pony kegs, and I've got two 80-gallon stainless, big, big, big boys. And I need something 30, 40 gallons, something in between. So I'm probably going to build a copper steel for that. Been looking for a new steel. I just wish some of the steel places would do payments. I would say, I know that there's several that builders with us that would do payments, but you're not going to be able to take possession until it's paid off. They've been stung too many times, but I'm sure there's quite a few that would, if you wanted to, send them payments, and they once you get it all paid off, they'd hook you up for sure. What's going on, Frankie? Sorry, I'm just seeing this, brother. 30 damn minutes later. I hope you're still here. I hope you're doing well, brother. Yep. That 140 is a good proof to pull. That's a good overall proof. You can't argue with that. Did you hear a damn bell? Yeah, you can't get me drunk tonight, Mark. I'm drinking water. So I'll sit and sip all night with you. Yeah, I've got a keg still, Bam Bam. I've got a keg thumper, little pony keg thumper. Actually, when I invented the bypass, a lot of people don't know it, but I'm the one that came up with the bypass many, many years ago that you see a lot of people using on jar rigs and thumpers and all that. That was my claim to fame and kind of how I got a lot more popular in the shine world these days. I guess Jerry, if you watched Moonshiners, Jerry claimed to invented it maybe 3 episodes ago, but he's about 25, 30 years a little late. I came up with that in the 80s. About 40 years a little late. I came up with 83 when I first did the bypass. And then I guess probably about 7 or 8 years ago, a friend of mine, we were all in the moonshine group. This is before this North Georgia Steels group that a lot of people back in the day started at. There were a lot of different groups on Facebook. Mine was private. I think I had the first moonshine group on Facebook, and that's before the show came out. And but it was just for me and my buddies. It was just a small group, a bunch of buddies from Eastern Kentucky. But Tyler Johnston came up. He was talking about he's getting some smearing issues with his keg and his thumper. And I'm like, well, yeah, you'll get a lot of smearing issues with your thumpers. Using a bypass will help because you can bypass your thumper, get all your heads and your foreshots done, and then flip the bypass and then start sending your vapor to your thumper and your infuser where you have all your flavors. Nothing worse than having a whole thumper full of infused uh, flavors, that you got some fruit or whatever cut up to infuse, and you got some other flavonoids or whatever, syrups, whatever in there. And there's nothing worse than running 4 shots and heads through that and adding acetone to it because that will smear for a long time. So I learned that a long time ago. And I was really surprised that nobody had ever come up with that and nobody had ever done it. I'm sure there might be some commercial distilleries that use something similar. I saw some diverters, I saw some retorts, but never just a simple bypass like what I came up with. But yeah, a lot of people use them. I gave it to the community. North Georgia started producing them first. I guess after I drew the diagram on there, and they started doing it, and then I guess Tracy started doing it. Copper Steel Co., Ace, and everybody started doing it, and I love it. It's great. I love seeing everybody use them. It definitely helps. So that was something I came up with back in the old days. I started out with a pressure cooker when I was just a kid. I went from that to a small copper steel, and that got stolen. And I went to a keg steel, and that's when I invented the bypass. I had a small thumper on that, and invented the bypass for that. And I used that keg steel for a long time. I used that in my damn dorm room when I was in college, and me and a bunch of buddies from Eastern Kentucky. I used the keg for a long time, and then I got some bigger steels, when I made a little bit more volume wise, and then still use kegs and stuff. And I got to where I wanted to do some stuff when it got a little cold. So I bought one of those little football vevers. I did some research. I was about to buy one of those little digiboils. They call them T500s, and they have different names. But I was worried about those elements going out in it and having to replace all that. And I didn't want to deal with that. I just wanted to use electric. And I thought, well, I've got this flat stove. It's infrared. That infrared heat's good on those stoves. It's a good even heat. And the stove I got doesn't cycle on and off when you get it above 8. It doesn't cycle on and off, and that's really something that you don't want happening. So that's why a lot of people don't use those coil stoves, electric stoves, because those coils would cycle on and off to maintain the heat. Where the infrared smooth top glass top, they generally don't cycle once you get above like a 7 or 8. I'm using a Frigidaire; it does great. But I got that little vapor so I could run inside when it's cold. And I didn't have to, use the bigger pots outside, and didn't have to use the turkey fryers and the big burners and all that. I could use electric. So I got the Vevers, and there's nothing wrong with Vevers. Those make excellent alcohol. Like I said, I've got a pretty interesting setup. I'm on my laptop. I don't have pictures to show here, but um, hit me up when I'm next week when I'm home, and I'll show you all some of the wild combinations I came up with and why I did them. But they're pretty interesting. A lot of people, you know, made similar setups, and they work well. Yeah, it definitely helps if you can have and adding tails. When you have a smaller steel like that, if you can save your tails and add them, and it'll get you some more volume for sure. But you don't want to get your mash too high because it just make that hot liquor, that fight liquor. I built my own steel pots and other things. Yeah, yep. And even had a small sub, but I want something bigger. I've been looking for copper sheets to build one. Can't find any around here. Um, there's some good sources online that you can get it. I'm trying to think of there's I can't think of the name of it. There's an outfit that's in close to Phil Billy that he uses, and there's the in West uses, and all of them use up there. And there's the same store in my town, but I can't remember the name of them. But if you shop around, most towns will have it. Roofing supply stores, you want to make sure that you're getting a pure copper and not some copper plate for flashing. But get a good 16 to 18 gauge for a small steel seems to be okay. If you're getting any size of 20-ounce copper, really probably what you want to go with, or ounce, I'm sorry, 16 to 18-ounce copper is okay for small stuff, and infusers and little things like that. But if you want to get if you're going 20, 15 to 20 or plus, I'd definitely go with a 20 ounce or a little bit heavier. 20 ounce seems to be a good, less expensive and still kind of, workable. That's what I've got a sheet of the 20, and it does, it works pretty well. It's hard to, you know, cut it and bend it and get it just right, but it's a lot harder to get dents and ruin and have issues with, and it won't implode as easy. But yeah, definitely making one. It saves you a whole bunch of money. I'll check you out in a little bit, Chris. After I when I'm about ready to call her a night, but we'll get your cameras tested out. I'll give you a call after I go off, and I'll give you a messenger call. Yep, that's right, Bam Bam. Yeah, gutter and roofing supply companies will have copper sheet. What's the highest proof? I mean, I've got a deflegmator and stuff. I've gone up to 180 high 180s for neutrals. I could have taken it on up. I've got spools. I could have gone a little higher, taller, but I had ceiling restrictions, so I couldn't really take the column up any higher. But with a deflegmator, I could have probably turn the temperature of the water that I'm circulating the deflegmator down more and cause more reflux to get a little bit higher. But I don't do a lot of neutral. I like to come off, depending on what I'm doing. 120 to 40 seems a pretty good range for flavor. Cool, brother. Oh, I appreciate your help, Bam Bam. I definitely do, brother. Because I can't. Sometimes I can't keep up with them. So I'm trying to get caught up. I'm about 20 minutes behind still. Blind Squirrel Peanut Butter Whiskey. Sounds interesting. Have you tried Nick Calo's peanut butter? I've tried some of that. It's not bad. It's pretty good stuff. Yeah, I know. You want to share some of them unique varieties. I do like trying a lot of different yeasts, though. I've got a lot of probably. Well, I like a Red Star Premier Rouge for like dark fruits. I like a Premier Blanc for like my white grapes, and I use that for my grappa that everybody seems to like pretty well. And for lighter color fruits like my peaches, I'll use it for them. I use Datey pretty much or Brett Fleischmann's for my grains. Um, Sugar washes, things like that. And just general stuff. I'll use the EC 1118. I'll use it for stuck fermentations. I use like a Lalvin D47 for like meads, and sometimes I'll experiment. I'll use it with some peach too. It's good with peaches, but just different. Just experiment with it because there's no right or wrong. I mean, there's better and not as good, but that's also an opinion. So yeah, definitely. And Jim Tom, another good guy. Gone. Yeah, everybody take another drink. I need one. I definitely need one. I'm freaking water. Uh oh. Heard somebody at the door. It's about time I get off here. I am slacking, man. I am. I'm slow. I get a little too long and winded, and sometimes I over teach things and get off on tangents, and horrible. It's horrible. Yeah, man. Breet and Mex. I'm gonna have to look up the Breet. Let me see what you're talking about. Got a conjurer. Hmm. I'm not getting anything in a breathe. Was you mean a breathe or hey? I know who the hell you are, Mark. I know you ain't Uncle Moonshine. Or were you talking? You probably talking to somebody else. I know who you are. Yeah, yeah. Temperature gauges. I mean, they'll let you know about when things are going to happen. You know, when you see your still start dripping, look at your temperature gauge. Look at your pot temperature. Look at your vapor temperature. Look at your thumper temperature. But to me, the only temperature gauge I watch is my condenser temperature, the temperature of the water in my condenser and my flake stand. I try to keep that at a certain temperature in the water that I'm circulating around my worm. I like to keep, or in my shotgun condensers, I like to keep that at a specific temperature, but the rest of it I don't really care much about. And 168 and upwards of 180, that's going to be a vapor temp. And in your column, in your pot, it's going to be in the 190s, like in the chart, 196, 198. But as it touches air, it automatically starts cooling off, condensing somewhat. Waters drop off first and stuff out of it. And as it works its way up the steel, it cools off. So, yeah, you can definitely get 160 to 80s, you know, in there, especially early on. Um, but as you progress, the temperatures climb in both. Angel's Envy. Yeah, that's good stuff for sure. I've been to that distillery. Dripping to a Brito. That'll work. You probably answered somebody's question. I don't. 180. Awesome. Yeah, it's a good for more neutrals. Are you trying to make a vodka or a more neutral spirit? What you got running, Tim? Yeah, Jay does claim a lot. Yeah, he claims he's like, yeah, this makes sense, doesn't it, with my bypass? Yeah, it just makes sense. He acts like he come up with that. That's like jar rigs when they put all those jar rigs and stuff. Hell, we've been doing that on the internet for years. I think they come to our groups to get ideas and stuff because they ran coffee like Mark Morgan. They've copied a lot of stuff that we've done. I don't care. I like it. Actually, I had some grandparents that grew up in Flatwoods. It was close to Ironton and Portsmouth, but no, I'm from Pike County, Pikeville. Night, brother. Hope you're doing better, bro. I hope you're not gone. I hope you're hearing that, but I hope you're feeling a lot better, my friend. Hell yeah, in the heart of Dixie. Eight's fine. If you're going to graduate from the eight, I'd go almost double that. Get you a 15, get you a keg or a 20 gallon. I'll tell you why. Um, I like to do it like a second run, and when you start out with like a 20 gallon, let's say, and I'm running 18 gallons in a 20, and hypothetically I'll get 2 gallons of good hearts, medium proof hearts that have been proofed down, and I want to make a second run for those, and I want to add some tails to it, a little water, and proof it down, and then I'm running. Then I only have like 6 gallons. Once I do all that, and it's like I can't run that in my big 20 because that's not enough to put in a 20. So if you got a smaller steel, like an 8, that 5 or 6 works out fine, with the tails, the hearts, and a little bit of proof down. So, you can make your second run on that, so that's why it's good to have a little bit smaller sometimes for that second run, your spirit run. Yeah, I like the submarine pots too. They're pretty cool. Lisa's been awful quiet. 71B. I'll have to try it. I'm not trying the 71B. I've heard people talk about that. I want to do the Kveki. I've bought some. I got a good deal on a block of that yellow label angel yeast that I'm going to try experiment with this summer. I'm going to do some rice, and I'm going to try to do a yeast converted mash with some grains. So that's going to be interesting. Yeah, your lager yeasts are generally lower temperature yeast, like a wine. in the 70s. And they say, when you have a longer fermentation like that, a lot of times you get some more interesting congeners in it. So yeah, yeah, I do the same. The only time I look at it trying to figure out where I'm going to get my first drip, and I definitely keep track of my condenser coolant. So I want to keep that between 65 and 75 and that general range. It doesn't hurt if it goes to 80 or 60, but it's pretty good in that range. Yeah, I agree. 125, 135, or 40. That's 120 to 140. I'm happy with anything that comes off with that. It's always a good flavor. I like my brandies to come off at 120 if I can, and carry that flavor over for sure. They do, don't they? I don't know how many times I've seen it, Bam Bam. We'll talk about something, and 6 months later, it's on the damn show. For sure, 100%. All right, I've actually caught up, and it's 11:15, and I heard a little rattling at my door. So it's either the cat or my cat. Might be Ann trying to send little subliminal messages to me. It's bedtime. What's up, Big Stepper? Prison White Lightning. Gotta be careful with that prison hooch. Did you watch that Master Distiller episode with Panhead Cooter? He's a good guy. We had him on about a month ago. Yeah, he's a great guy. But they had an episode on Master Distiller of Prison Hooch, and he he went in there and he smoked him. He used experience. You could tell that he was a very experienced shiner, and he was going against. No offense to the people he went against, but they just didn't have a lot of years under their belt like he did. And you could tell the way he did things. Yeah, he's a good old shiner. Old Panhead's a good guy too, super guy. But yeah, he did that prison hooch. But you got to be careful. Some of that prison hooch, you can get some poisoning from it if you don't do the right thing. Awesome, awesome. Yeah, Panhead's a great guy. Yeah, follow those. There's a lot of good ways to do it. There's a lot of things out there, unique sugars and carbs that you convert. Just be careful and look for a lot of bacteria and stuff because some of them are prone to promote some bacterial growth than others. Like breads and stuff. Those, I know when you mulch up a lot of cakes and stuff like that, you tend to get some blue molds and stuff in there, and so you got to kind of do a little extra care. But yeah, it's interesting. Well, you got to beat me. I'm gonna be in that too, Bam Bam. So I'll let you hold it though, Uh, and maybe I'll let you take a picture with it. Absolutely. What's your? We've been over this a few times, but I guess you tuned in late, and I'm glad you're here. What's your budget look like, Bradford? And is this something you want to do on the stove, or you want to do outside on a turkey fryer burner, or how much liquor do you expect out of each run? These all things to consider when deciding what steel, what type of distillate. Are you mostly going to do brandies and whiskeys? Are you going to do vodkas and rums and gins? What going to do a little bit of everything? A lot of things to go over. To determine what would probably be best. I would say if you're have budget constraints and you don't have a lot of money at all, you can't beat a keg steel. You can pick up a keg for 35, $40 on Facebook Marketplace, and trying to stay under five. Um, right. I'd say it's hard to go wrong with one of those football vevers. A 13 or a 18 and a half is a pretty decent size. It's rewarding enough for you to get a decent volume each time because it's a lot of work, and you can put as much work into making a 5 gallon mash as you can a 15-gallon mash. There's just a little bit more of it, but you're stirring, you're adding, you're boiling water. It doesn't take that much more to just a little bit more work to make that much more, and you get a lot more return. So it's not a lot more work, and you're getting a lot more return. So, there's that to consider. So I think 13 to 15 is a pretty good size that gets you a decent amount of liquor each time to make it worth it. And it's not so small where it's tough to make cuts, because once you learn to make cuts on a small steel, you'll be damn good on a big steel, um, because it's a lot easier to make cuts on that big steel. It's there's um, a lot less margin of error, when you're dealing with a larger volume. So I'd say the 13 to 18 football vevers are a good start. You can pack your little football head with some copper mesh to take these sulfides out if you need to, and it's a good starter for 250. Around $250. It's a good little start. There's even websites on it. I mean, we want you, of course, to come into the militia or Copper Steel Outlaws. We can help you in it. I've got one. I run it all the time. I mean, I'm an advanced distiller, and I love the little things. They're great. Um, Great for stovetop if you got a good, like we were saying earlier, got a good infrared glass top stovetop. They make a pretty decent, constant temperature. It's a good heat. It's a good spread heat. My 18 and a half covers 3 burners. I got 5 burners on my stove, and I got like a 3200 watt, a 2200 watt, and then a warmer, and I crank them all up to 8 to start out with and bring it up, and it doesn't cycle on and off. That's one thing you have to watch out for if you're using a stove is cycling. You don't want cycling. You want a constant heat. This one, you can see it's red. They glow red when they're on, and so you can see if it's cycling. So if it starts cycling, you can turn it up and keep it from cycling. But yeah, it's a great little steel to start with. It's very modular. You can add uh, sky's the limit. I mean, you got jar rigs, you got thumpers, you can add columns, you can go straight into a condenser. There's just so much you can do with them. It's a good place to start. And it's if you get a 13 to 18 in that range, it's not something that a lot of times people get 3 to 5 gallon ones, and they love the hobby, and it's like damn, all that work, I only got a couple quarts, only got a quart. So they look to buy a new one. So you can skip the first one and just start out with a 13 to 18 and be happy with that, and then eventually maybe work up into building your own copper steel or buying one. But with that, I'm gonna have to get out of here, guys. It's getting 11:30. Had a great night, man. A lot of good questions. Love it. Getting a lot more new people in. I see, and definitely want to bring y'all into the militia. And if y'all ain't doing nothing later, check out my new show, Silent Cigar Review Show. All right, brother. Yeah. Do you have a link or something, Josephus? If you want to share a link for everybody to come check it out, you're more than welcome to, my friend. I don't usually offer that to everybody, but seemed like a pretty good feller. So if you want to share your link before we get out of here, we may have some I don't smoke cigars. I like them left-handed cigars. I might use a wrapper. Cigar wrappers. You got a review on the wrappers? All right, y'all. Take care. If you're a cigar smoker, go check out Josephus. Josephus, join the militia, man. Get on Facebook, look up Moonshine Militia, and get in there. All the rest of you guys got questions, join up, and love to have y'all in there. We can help y'all out, get you started, and give you some good recommendations. Good night, Miss Lisa. And tomorrow night for Thirsty Thursday that's the ladies' night, is it not? Yeah. Everybody tune in tomorrow night for the ladies' night. Lisa, Mama B, and who y'all got coming on tomorrow night? Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it, brother. Lisa, who you got coming on tomorrow night? You know yet? Anytime, brother. I enjoy the hell out of these shows. And I appreciate everybody coming in and helping me out and trying to keep caught up. I see a lot of you answering questions for me, and I definitely appreciate it. So if there's any questions, should I be doing that, or is he going to get mad at me? Hell no, because y'all have heard me say it, and you all know, you've learned it. So I love the participation and getting everybody in there. April and Jamie, awesome. So jump on tomorrow night, catch Lisa, Mama B, April, and Jamie. They have some pretty fun discussions. I'll try to jump in there. I'm going to be limited. I'm on vacation and working vacation, and so I won't be able to be in here for the whole thing. But I'm definitely going to jump in there and see what you gals are up to. But thanks for everybody for tuning in. Definitely hit us up. Hit that like button. If you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button so we know that you love us. It helps us out. It's free. It just takes one little mouse swipe and click. Share us with a friend. If you got some buddies that want to get in the hobby, definitely get the word out and let's get them in here and get them started on the right path, and they can enjoy the hobby with you. And with that, I'm going to bid y'all a adieu and hope everybody has a great week. See you tomorrow night with Lisa, and we'll be back on Friday for the shit show. Now, the shit show isn't so much about moonshine and all that. We talk about everything. I mean, we might talk about politics. If you're weak of mind or you're a snowflake, I don't recommend it because you might get offended. But if you're not easily offended, you might enjoy the shit show. We have a lot of fun on there, and it gets a little crazy. We've had a little craziness, but we try to come on with the questions and answers. If we're not bringing on master distillers talking about what's going on in the show, they've had a break, so we're doing more Q&As. But we're going to try to do it all. Love you too, Chris. And hopefully you better be back, KRB. You better join us on the militia. You look like a militia man anyway, you old hippie. So we'll catch y'all later. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you Friday night at the shit show or Saturday for more Q&A. Shine on.